impacted. Children and families are suffering.
Donald Trump has signed an executive order to rename Lake Ontario Lake America. He says the change on the US side of the border will take effect immediately. He also said Russia will not be attacking NATO. Earlier this week, the head of the CIA travelled to Moscow to speak to his counterparts there. The leader of the Liberal Democrats has described recent events around Middlesbrough as deeply worrying. Police are investigating an assault with a knife, a car hitting a wall outside a house, a fire which killed 2 people, and a crash on the A66 where 7 people died. Officers investigating that collision have made 17 arrests. Here is Ed Davey.
There's clearly organised criminals there who need to be cracked down on, and the tragic death of those young policemen, I think, has really touched the country and obviously the community up in Middlesbrough.
We can now buy plug-in solar panels in shops and online in the UK after rules were relaxed. It means the power can run into the home network using an ordinary plug. LBC business commentator Declan Curry has more details.
They can be used in the garden, on the balcony or other outdoor spaces. They are aimed at people who can't put solar panels on their roof, for example, people who live in flats. The government says they could provide 1/5 of the electricity needed by the typical home.
Parents have been protesting across the UK today, calling for more support for mothers and fathers juggling work and family life. There have been demonstrations outside Downing Street, Holyrood and the Senedd. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed down 86 points at 10,793. The pound buys $1.35 and €1.17. LBC weather, showery rain heading north tonight with more thunderstorms arriving in the south later on, a low of 13. The rain moving north tomorrow with sunnier skies following from the southeast and a high of 23 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Tim Humphrey.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Henry Riley.
And a very good evening to you. 3 minutes after 7 is the time you're listening to Henry Riley in for Ian Dale tonight on LBC. Pleasure to have your company. Thank you very much for joining us. It brings to an end my 2-week stint actually tonight, so it's been lovely having your company for the last couple of weeks. Ian Dale will be back from Tuesday because, of course, there's a bank holiday on Monday, but it's been great being with you. My regular slot is on a Sunday from 3, by the way, if you're interested. We are discussing tonight a whole range of issues. Coming up after 9, we're talking about shotguns and whether you should legally be allowed to own one in Britain. This after the police watchdog, according to the Telegraph, is reporting there should be further restrictions. And then coming up after 8, so just before that, and in the next hour from now, we're talking about vaccination rates because the childhood vaccination levels are down again. What do you put that down to, and what should, if any, the consequences be if you don't get your baby, I suppose it would be, vaccinated? So that's all coming up later on in the programme. This hour, though, I want to start with Birmingham, start in the Midlands, and Birmingham City Council is seeking an injunction to stop members of an anti-migrant group from erecting flags, including the Union Jack and St George's flags, on public infrastructure from around the country. A nationwide campaign to give prominence to the England flag resulted, and you'll remember this, I think it all really kicked off around a year or so ago after protests in Epping and then across the country. It resulted in thousands of St George's crosses being flown from lampposts, roundabouts and other public infrastructure, and it's believed to have started last summer in Birmingham. The Raise the Colours campaign has polarised opinion, with some viewing the flags as a sign of patriotism and others criticising it as a display of nationalism, perhaps even intimidation, particularly aimed at minority ethnic people. Now, in July, Birmingham residents, some of them, accused the City Council of giving free rein to these flag raisers. And the hope from the City Council now is that they get this High Court injunction to stop members from erecting these flags. They've also spoken of council workers receiving abuse or intimidation while taking the flags down. The same month, by the way, in July, that was when Oxfordshire County Council, where there's also been a proliferation of flag displays, secured a permanent High Court injunction to stop the flags flying from lampposts. Now, as I say, there has been been, for some, a report of harassment, intimidation or obstruction of staff who are tasked with removing these flags. Clearly, the issue of flags has been something which has been really sort of strangely dominating debates here in the UK. I think my take on it is, and it's so often the case with these campaigns, if you look at Raise the Colours, this is not some group of hard-working local tradespeople who do this as sort of a hobby in their spare time. If you look at the group of people who are behind the Raise the Colours campaign, I mean, call a spade a spade. Many of them are absolutely vile, and the things they've said in the past are not particularly helpful. And I think often they should be, and haven't been, but they should be called out. They should be called out for some of the disgusting things they've said in the past. One individual, who I won't name, but is associated with this campaign, said he wants to get immigrants out the F country during a confrontation. Another individual in Raise the Colours clothing was filmed grabbing at the face covering of a woman who appeared to be from an ethnic minority. In France, members filmed themselves talking about hundreds of thousands of undocumented men committing murders and gang rapes, and claiming that the indigenous white population was being replaced in our country. Now, for 1 second am I saying that everyone who went to a protest in Epping, or who put flags up around the country, or who, I think they were painted on zebra crossings at one point as well, weren't they, or roundabouts. Do I think you're a racist? No, I don't. But I think you've got to be really careful who you associate yourself with. And the people who are behind this movement are far right. And you've got to call that out, and you've got to make sure that you know what you're doing. Now, is it far right to stick a flag up? No. I think it looks tatty. I think it looks horrible. Am I in favour of having more flags up and down the country? Yes, I think council buildings, public buildings should be flying them. If you want to fly a flag from your flat or house or wherever you live, that's absolutely fine. I've got no problem with that. I'd like to see it, bluntly, as more sort of bunting as well. I love going to various high streets. I remember being in Windsor, and it was lovely seeing the flag bunting, St George's Union flag everywhere. And that's fine, but let's not sort of take matters into our own hands and have people who, I mean, clearly have never put a flag up in their life doing it, where it looks disgusting, it discolours after a couple of weeks, and then you end up with the council having to take the blooming thing down. I mean, I don't love it. I mean, John already says, what a surprise, the left-wing LBC against national pride. I don't think there's anything left or right-wing about wanting flags that go up to look nice. I've said right at the bloody start, John, I'm in favour of bring more flags on. That's fine. I like flags. I like the St George's flag. I like the Union flag. I want to reclaim it from idiots who put it up to intimidate people. So if we have a campaign to have more flags across the country, that's fine. I'm all in favour of it. But can we do it in a sensible way that doesn't just lead to a couple of amateurs going up and down random towns and cities, popping up flags which look completely naff? What do you think? 0345 6060 973. And on my point about seeing more flags, by the way, I appreciate as a white man, I can say that, and I'm in favour of it. But I do speak to people, I know there'll be people moaning at me in the messages now, but I do speak to people who say, I wonder if it's designed as a way to intimidate me. So what do these flags mean to you? Are they a sign of national pride, or are they seen as bluntly a threat, intimidation? The number is 0345 6060 973. You can WhatsApp on that same number. And if you've been involved in this campaign as well in the past, then do give me a call. I've got, I'm more than willing to have a conversation with you. I'd enjoy having a conversation with you. And in your local area, has this become an issue where there are flags basically everywhere? And what do you think about it? Are you in favour of it for your local part of the world? Or do you think it, like I said, looks a bit tatty, looks a bit naff? Your calls on that in a moment. Firstly, let's speak with Councillor Tim Bearder, who is leader of the Liberal Democrat-run Oxfordshire County Council. They won a High Court battle, as I referenced right at the start, to ban the unauthorised hanging of flags on lampposts. And delighted to say Tim joins me on the line now. Just explain firstly why you felt the need to take out this injunction, Tim.
Hello, Henry. Just trying to make you out not to be a racist there. I've seen that clip on your interview with the Scottish person this week.
Oh, yes. I'm upsetting everyone this week.
Very obviously racist, yeah. No, yeah, it was something we had to do. We've been had a sustained campaign in Oxfordshire. We had Raise the Colours Oxfordshire, but sort of splinter branch of the national campaign. They put up flags across the whole of the county on some of our major roundabouts. And as you say, these are polyester flags attached with cable ties, and we're starting to get the rain finally, and they don't survive well in the rain. And if they've made an undertaking to look after them and maintain them for the whole of the year, maybe. I mean, it's still an illegal act to attach anything to civic infrastructure, but still, what we ended up with was tattered, ripped flags, and they came off. If that fell on your windscreen as you were about to make a move onto a major roundabout, that could be a serious danger. Also, they were putting up, these are heavy men often with long ladders, and I don't know if you know anything about these lampposts, but they're designed with a crumple zone in them so that if a car hits them, the car is not completely
I see, right.
They have very shallow infrastructure. When we do any work on these, we use cherry pickers and we go up, so we're not actually touching the flag, the lamppost itself. And so they're causing damage to infrastructure, creating a hazard, and we have a responsibility to maintain a neutral space on our highways. And this is irresponsible. But it's irresponsible because it also is a slap in the face to everybody who the council has to provide service for. So this year, Oxfordshire County Council, like many councils across the country, including Birmingham, which is basically bankrupt, we have to make £4 million worth of savings. The last thing we want to do when we're trying to look after vulnerable adults, in social services, is to pay £80,000, which is what we had to pay to remove the flags, and £40,000 on legal costs. It's just an insult to those people.
Lee Anderson, the Reform UK MP, has previously said that elected officials who support removing the British or English flag should be removed from office for betraying the very country they serve. Now, I've seen anecdotally there are reports of council staff receiving harassment, intimidation. Has that been the case in Oxfordshire?
Absolutely. So we sent people out to take down the flags because, they were creating a tatty mess and causing a hazard on our highways. And people started intimidating them and threatening them. We had instances where they would actually put their address up. They follow them home and they'd put their address up on social media. I mean, the harassment that I've had as a council leader, the absolute abuse. I made the mistake of going on GB News, and I immediately got phone calls because sadly my phone number's made its way onto the internet, and people have just been absolutely horrendously abusive. Now, I can take that, I'm a politician, but we had to have contracted staff going out in the middle of the night with balaclavas on to do this work, and many of them refused to do it because they were getting such intimidation. It's created a huge amount of divisive animosity in Oxfordshire.
Where does the line get drawn, though? Because there's nothing better when we've just had I was going to say successful, is nearly could have been more successful, but football tournament, and we've had, when we have big events, be they sort of royal weddings or coronations or whatever that is, and people love seeing the flags flying out of windows or cars and whatnot. I mean, sort of, where's the limit there? Because I doubt if people were putting up coronation flags, you'd be taking them down in Oxfordshire.
Yeah, well, I met this chap and I was delivering leaflets, and he said, I'm really against you taking down these flags. And I said, look, mate, I am entirely up for you putting flags on your own property. And I festooned my house with flags during the World Cup because I'm as patriotic as the next person. But I said, would you, if you just finished watching the England play and we beat a country and you decided, yeah, I'm going to go down to the Headington Hill roundabout and put up flags all over the thing. I'll get a ladder first and do that. I really don't understand the mentality. Put up flags wherever you like on your own property. That is perfectly legal. It is illegal to put it up on council property. People have died doing that. In Bristol, there was a gentleman fell off his ladder and killed himself. And so it's just irresponsible to do that on a busy roundabout.
Are these flags used for intimidation, do you think? How do you respond when you see these flags up on lampposts, for example, when you're driving through Oxfordshire? Not anymore, I appreciate, but previously.
Yeah, I mean, it's the injunction, which was the first in the country, by the way, and we set legal precedent doing this, and it's largely stamped it out because you face prison if you do this in Oxfordshire now. But, how did I feel? Well, I can tell you how my residents.
What offence is it, by the way? You say they face prison for breaching the injunction.
So now we've got a High Court injunction.
Right.
If you put up flags or any item onto the highways infrastructure in Oxfordshire, it's just for Oxfordshire. You do face prison or you have your assets seized. So what we've done is we up the ante. It was always illegal. It's always illegal.
Yeah.
The country to do that.
Well, look, I mean, I'm not in favour of it. I don't know. We should be sending people to prison for putting flags up. Really?
Yeah, but what we're saying is we set a very high precedent because we first of all we tried to ignore it. We thought this would die down.
Yeah.
It didn't. We started sending them letters saying, "Please don't do this." I mean, they were being brazen about this.
I agree. But you're a liberal, Mr. Bearder. I mean, you don't want to see people, and you'll know all too well about the prison overcrowding crisis. Just to be clear, you don't want to see people in prison, do you, for breaching this?
Of course not. Of course not.
Okay.
But it's my responsibility to maintain a safe and neutral highway space and also protect the public purse so that I can spend money where it's needed on vulnerable adults, in social care or on vulnerable children. So, our hand was forced because we had over a year of sustained people putting up, and it's a very small minority of people.
Isn't it better just to fine them?
Well, okay, so it is illegal, so we could have taken them to court, right? The maximum penalty is £2,000, and that's commensurate on your ability to pay. So these individuals often didn't have a large amount of money, were facing a derisory sum of money. We would have a very expensive legal process to get to that point, and it's no disincentive at all. So Justice Dias, who made his ruling, he said that it was obvious to him that if they, without a court injunction that we went to, that this simply wouldn't stop. And we had tried every avenue, writing to them, pleading with them, every avenue to stop them doing it, taking down the flags, originally ignoring it, but it was a sustained campaign to do this. So our hands were forced. Of course, I don't want to be sending people to prison for doing something like this, but that's now the stakes are quite high now.
But when you see the flag, just to reiterate that question again, what goes through your mind? I mean, let's sort of leave the tatty ones hanging from lampposts, for example. Would you like to see more flags in Oxfordshire that are done in the right way?
I think it can be done through a legitimate democratic process on flag poles. We already fly flags on the council buildings, and the university sometimes flies flags, etc. On private property, I think it's fine, but I just think it's wrong to fly on highways because, let's face it does have a divisive and intimidatory role. And some people are clearly using it to tell people to go home, or this is England, or whatever message they're trying to send. It's not appropriate for a neutral space. And what we ended up having is this kind of war of the flags. So we had LGBT flags and Jamaican flags and Polish flags. And if I'm an Arsenal fan, right? If I take it upon me. Apologies to some of the out there, but if I take it upon me to start festooning all of the highways with Arsenal flags, is that appropriate? It's craziness.
Well, I'd certainly be in favour of it. Thank you, Tim, for your time. Tim Beard, a fellow Gooner who's leader of the Liberal Democrats on Oxfordshire County Council and won a High Court battle to ban the unauthorised hanging of flags on public lampposts. Going straight to your views on this in just a moment. As I say, I want to see more flags up. That's fine. I'm very patriotic. I love the flag. I love the World Cup when we see people doing it properly, draped from their windows and whatnot. That's fine. I just don't like seeing them basically where they're done in a way where they look, let's be honest, absolutely rubbish. And they're done with an intention that I think has clearly... it's done for the intention, I would just basically, to talk about immigrants, which is not what our flag is about, in my view. But what do you think? Your calls next.
This is LBC.
going everywhere. And I decided in the end to actually make use of the Highways Act 1980, Section 132. And I printed it out, put it in a little sleeve. And, it stopped some of the flags going out, also taking some down from lampposts. And as for the attacks on council workers and anyone who thinks that, why don't you just do it on your own home, out the front of your own garden?
Yeah.
Why don't you just, put your mouth where your heart is on all of that. Own up to it all.
Well, I mean, I'm interested that you've been taking them down then. I mean, I think they've been using cherry pickers to put them up. So how the hell have you been ripping them down if they're from lampposts, or are they not from lampposts?
Well, rather precariously. I mean, some of them that have been on the A27, because I was sick and tired of seeing them flapping away in the wind every time I went down to pick up my disabled son.
Right.
It just really prodded at me. It's a bit like, no, there's so many of my friends, from different cultural backgrounds. UK is wonderful. I love the UK. Britain is an amazing country, right? But as for the question about getting them down, I used a 3.5 metre ladder and then propped it up against a lamppost. And because I couldn't reach the rest of it, I then got a pole, which then had a hook on the top of it to then try and get down. I was effectively 4.5 metres up. See, I do it on my own rather than these guys who carry. It is dangerous.
And why did you feel so strongly to actually go and take it down? Because I don't know, did you get confronted by anyone?
I haven't, because I did it in the middle of the night.
Oh, right, okay.
And the reason I did it is because personal friends of mine have actually said to me how utterly intimidated they are by that. And let's not forget. There's a few things here, right? So let's not forget that this is all coming from complex issues in this country that are getting weaponized by popular narratives from populist politicians, right? So none of these things going on in the world today are answered by easy answers, quick answers by right-wingers, okay? What we need to do is rebuild the context of the social contract in this country, yeah?
I think there's a good argument to say that this is more complex than people just going and, sort of whacking up flags for the point of it. There are some who say this is a bit of a cry for help, basically, and there are some bigots who are involved in it, and there are evidence in other cases of racism, but people are basically just fed up of their living standards being stagnant, aren't they? And this seems to be the boiling point of all of that. I don't see it necessarily as a racist act, though. I think there are some racists involved, but I don't think... And that's maybe 5%.
No,
I think the vast majority of people are just doing it because they feel, that they've been sort of ignored, don't you think?
I totally agree with you on that, and let's be careful not to get too easily caught up in binaries about it all being one way or the other, as I said before, right? So I think a lot of this boils down to the fact that successive governments and governance in this country, regardless of colour, have completely failed the majority of people, whilst letting the ultra-wealthy be able to do whatever they want with no accountability. Meanwhile, the ramifications of the rollout of AI, job losses and pressure on welfare just gets worse and worse. Could I just ask you a quick question in terms of something I found out, which I thought was fascinating? And this, I think, confirms my point around the thing about populist narratives and the weaponizing of that. So I had a look at gross tax receipts for the UK, right? 24-25. And if we were to take every £100 that the UK gets tax receipts...
Where's this going? Yeah?
Yeah. What do you think out of £100 would be the total cost of hotels being put with migrants and asylums being put up with it, and the asylum budget in total out of £100?
I think the asylum budget is about $5 billion, I think, and we've got an economy of about $3 trillion. I don't know, is the honest answer. It's like 0.5%.
Okay, no, it wasn't me. No, I mean, because I didn't know what it was, so I looked it up. So it's 0.21%.
Yeah, close.
Yeah?
Yeah. Well, and that's the point, isn't it? And I'm pleased you've made that, because you're right. It's and actually, if you look at opinion polls as well, Adam, there's all sorts of... I remember sort of some of my colleagues talking about this, where they say that people think the number of net legal migration is going up when it's going down. People think that there are more people crossing on small boats than there were 2 years ago, which certainly, based on the current figures, I don't think would necessarily be true. Adam, great talking to you. Thanks for being a first-time caller. Make sure you're like Adam, first-timer. Great to have you on. Let's go to John, who's in Armagh. Hi, John.
Hello there. Hi. As you know, as you can see, I'm from Northern Ireland, and it breaks my heart to see the same thing happening over in the mainland. I don't get what you say. It's like dogs weighing on the lamppost. It's marking out territory. That's what it is.
Do you think there's ever a sort of fair reason for doing it? I'm not saying necessarily legitimate, but not everyone's doing it as a racist, clearly.
Well, it's you see all these flags. They show like England flags. It's like we only want white English-speaking people living in this area.
That's what you take from it, is it?
Yes, I think it does. I think it does.
Is there also a sense, though, John, where people go to... I mean, I remember I spend time in France because I have family there, and you do see, maybe it's just me being sort of anecdotal, but you do see in other countries them flying the flag perhaps more keenly than we do, and we're somehow a bit shy about it.
Well, it's fair enough. If you have flags flying on public buildings and libraries and all that, that's fine. That's fine. Which I think they do it down in France. Or do we go the other way, like in the States, where everybody flies the flag out on their doorstep, and then you look at if you don't fly it. What do we do?
Thanks, John. I think it's an interesting point bringing in Northern Ireland there as well. Of course, I'm not even going to get into that and try and paraphrase it, but you're right. It's certainly sort of interesting, the parallel you say about feeling sad that it's happened over here as well. Martin's in Doncaster. Hi, Martin.
I am, yeah. I'm bringing it up because I don't have a problem with the flag. I have them up all year round. I've got a St George's one in my Liverpool, and I've only just recently took them down from my windows from the football.
From the World Cup. Very good.
Yeah, I'm a big... I have them up. I have them live. I have a St George's one with my local football club, Doncaster Rovers, and I've got the... Anyway, I have that up quite a bit often, and...
What is it? St George's flag with Doncaster Rovers on it, is it? Or
initials, DRFT,
right.
yeah. And I have that up quite a lot, because I'm a big sports fan. Anyway, I've got an Asian group of lads next door to me, and I remember just over a month ago when World Cup on, and they know me, but I don't, not well, and I said to one of them, I said, I ain't got it up because I'm a racist. I said, I've got it up because I'm a football fan. Anyway, I think what annoys me is if raise of flags, we're that bothered about the flags. It's like our area. We've got loads of them down our street, and they're terrible. They've been up since Southport now, and I've actually written to my council, and I've got nowhere over the last 2 months.
Oh, you want them removed, do you?
No, I said to the council, I said, would you come round and take them down, and would you replace them? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I said that I don't mind them being replaced, but they're not flags anymore. They're like Arthur flags because they're disintegrated. They look terrible. Anyway, I got a letter back saying, no, we won't remove them. There's two. He said at the time they were installed by residents, not the council, and he said, because of the tensions within the local communities regarding the national pride, this is the letter what I'm reading off now, and the dangers involved and all this lot. Yeah, so they're just going to leave them up. But it's like I say, if razor flags were bothered.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean...
Do you think this is a trend, or is it a sort of flash in the pan, this? Are we going to see more of it, or is it going to fizzle out, do you think, people putting these flags up?
I think you're going to see more, because you've got an election coming up in the next 3 years. 2 years, sorry, or 3 years. We
haven't seen it before previous elections, not to sort of this extent.
No, I totally agree. Listen, some of it is racist to me. Some of it isn't. It's both ways for me, but...
Yeah, well, I think I'm largely with you, Martin, on that. Thanks for calling in. Always good to hear from you. Martin there in Doncaster. More calls in a moment. 0345 6060 973. I said at the start, I'll say again, if you've been involved in either the putting up, the erecting, or the taking down of these flags, I would really like to hear from you in this conversation as well. 0345 6060 973. Also,
There are concerns about tensions in Teesside after another property was rammed overnight, just days after the A66 crash, which killed 7 people and a fatal house fire. I'm LBC's Phoebe Abbott-Zazy with the latest.
A full report from Phoebe next. Plus, we'll also speak with the former mayor of Middlesbrough. 7:31 The Time. News, Daryl Jackson.
More than 380 people are now confirmed to have died after flash floods in Nepal and neighbouring Tibet. Footage shows walls of mud sweeping through entire communities after a glacier collapsed near the border. Donald Trump has said Russia will not attack NATO. Earlier this week, the director of the CIA flew to Moscow for talks with officials there. And the 2 police officers killed in a collision on the A66 near Middlesbrough at the weekend died of head and neck injuries. This lunchtime, a man was injured in a serious knife attack just a few minutes away. LBC weather, a band of heavy thundery rain over central and northern England moving north. Scattered thundery showers elsewhere tonight, lows of between 14 and 18 degrees.
This is LBC.
Flags from lampposts. I think it looks naff, and I think when you associate yourself with a group like Raise the Colours, where there are some really unsavoury members and founders, I think you've got to really think twice. That's my view. What's yours? If you disagree with me, by the way, I'd like to hear from you. If you've been putting these flags up, then do challenge me. 0345 6060 973 is the number to call. Right, we'll come back to your views on that in just a moment. First, though, a manhunt is underway after a man was stabbed in Middlesbrough on Thursday, i.e. today, the latest incident in the town this week. Cleveland police said a 39-year-old man is receiving treatment following an assault involving a bladed weapon in Eston at around midday. And this, as the local council leader is saying, that people living in a town where the car crash and house fire have left 9 people dead deserve to feel safe in their own homes. In a moment, we'll be speaking with the former mayor of Middlesbrough. First, though, our reporter in the northeast, Phoebe Abbott-Zazy, joins me for an update on the line now. Phoebe.
So, Henry, to bring you up to date, police here are investigating that awful crash on the A66 at the weekend, a knife attack that happened this afternoon, a car hitting a wall outside a house last night, and a fire early yesterday morning which killed 2 people, all within about 3 square miles of each other. It's not clear if those incidents are linked or what they have to do with organised crime. I was at the scene of the house ramming earlier today. It's a little terrace street, and though neighbours don't want to be recorded, they told me it happened around half midnight last night. They heard a big bang and believe it was a deliberate collision. Nearby, a 39-year-old's been injured in a knife attack only a few hours ago. He's being treated at the moment, and it's a few miles from the scene of the fatal house fire, which killed 7-year-old Valentina Foster and her aunt, 34-year-old Natalie MacDonald, yesterday. 2 men aged 23 and 31 have been arrested on suspicion of murder. And although detectives have said they can't rule out organised crime, Natalie's family have said she had nothing to do with gangs or the crash on the A66. There were 4 other people injured in that blaze too. Now, Andy Burnham, the Prime Minister, has told LBC the government's offered support to the emergency services here.
It will be the fullest possible investigation. The authorities will have all of the support that they need. We do need to understand to the extent to which they may be connected, but they may not be. So I think it's too early to jump to conclusions. But what we can say at this point in time is that all of the support will be provided to get to the heart of what has happened here.
And there are concerns about whether people living here feel safe enough to report what they know. I've been told some people don't want to report crimes because they're worried about possible retribution. Matt Vickers, a local MP and shadow policing minister, had this message for residents.
Share any information we have, report any incidents we see, back our police as they put themselves in harm's way to keep us safe, and do whatever they can to ensure that the incidents we've seen in the last few days are not repeated.
And all of this comes only days after that crash on the A66 that killed 2 police officers and 5 young men. It was a head-on wrong-way collision. The young men had been involved in a police chase immediately before, though the marked police car they crashed into wasn't directly part of that pursuit. Detectives have told us they believe the group were using cloned plates and had been linked to another car, a Volvo, which had been ramming properties earlier that morning. There have been 17 arrests in the investigation into events before that chase and that crash, from ranging a range of suspected offences, from weapons possession to involvement in organised crime. Henry.
Thanks very much, Phoebe Abruzese, who's been covering this story throughout the day, throughout the week, really, for LBC's North East reporter. Andy Preston was the independent mayor of Middlesbrough previously and joins me on the line now. Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Preston. What is going on in Middlesbrough?
Hi, Henry. So what we've got going on is a criminal underclass. You might want to call them gangs. You might want to call them organised crime, but actually that kind of flatters them. They're disorganised crime. These are chaotic groups. When you hear about these organised crime gangs in Middlesbrough and across the country, don't think of the Sopranos or Las Vegas gangsters. Think about young people in tracksuits living chaotic lives, and are largely involved in the low-level distribution of drugs. But they are potentially dangerous because they're stupid and they're crazy. These people live outside the law. And a big theme of your report just then, Henry, was about people being scared to report crime. Now, let me tell you, this is not new. For decades, this has been brewing in Middlesbrough and elsewhere. There's a criminal underclass that is growing in number, growing in confidence, because there are no consequences. And what happens is, when there are no consequences, not only do they feel more bold and threaten and intimidate witnesses, the witnesses become terrified of ever saying anything. So this thing gets worse and worse until the authorities step in and get these people to rapid justice. I'm aware I'm monologuing here, so apologies. No. But what I want to get across is that Middlesbrough is a high crime place. It always has been. It has become the highest crime town or city in England, outside of the city of Westminster, which is boosted by tourism. But it's always been up there. And you see the same problems actually in Manchester. Yeah. Manchester has exactly the same issues, as does Blackpool, Hull, and places like that. But what we've seen, as we've become more empathetic, sympathetic, and seeking to rehabilitate people and understand them, rather than lock them up, we've created more of a problem for ourselves. I believe in all of those things, those nice things, but the first thing you have to do is someone who's a menace in their society, their community, get them locked up, and then work on empathy, sympathy, and rehabilitation. We've got it all wrong.
And I've been listening to politicians from that region, from your region, saying that the police are trying to do a job that requires basically a metropolitan budget, but consistently Cleveland as a force gets the sort of lower end in terms of public settlements. Is that something you would agree with?
I am very sceptical of that. Everyone, when they do badly, will say it's because they haven't got the resources. Yet councils do it, but I can show you councils that do a great job on limited budgets and councils that do an awful job on big budgets. I think the truth is, so much of it is about will, determination, organisation and discipline. And you know what? I think the police somewhat in all areas become desensitised to things. Another house fire that was deliberate, another ram raid on a shop or a house. And I think the police become desensitised. And the police know, we get the police action that we deserve and crave. And we've treated the police in a certain way and encouraged them to handle things differently. So, for example, the horrible events at Manchester Airport a year and a bit ago, where there was the thugs that actually attacked the coppers. Yet when footage shows the coppers that looked like the coppers attacking the thugs, so many of our politicians, Henry, came out and immediately attacked the police. The police know that they haven't got the initial support of politicians. The police have learned to tread very carefully. And we need to reward them and push them and incentivise them and say, we will back you. If you do wrong, we will come down on you hard. But until someone shows us that, you have our full support. So we need backing from politicians of all sides. Do we need more money? Well, it always helps, but I think it's a culture change that's needed.
When you were talking about areas where people are afraid to report crime, I'll be honest, it's not an area I know particularly well, but I imagine this is the case up and down, various parts of the country. But are you sort of making the point that in parts of Middlesbrough, they are akin to a no-go zone, in the sense that they're not policed in the regular way?
No, I'm not saying that.
Because the police can't get there because it's run by these, sort of scrotes or whatever.
You know what? I wouldn't say that, but I'm going to tell you one thing that actually happened. I used to spend a lot of time. Law and order was a big thing for me as mayor. I wanted to really help, support and protect the people that feel intimidated by these thugs. And I spent a lot of time with the police, and they were great. But one experience I had, we went to a part of town that had a big crime issue. A lot of the similar issues we're hearing about now, but perhaps hadn't been escalated to the same level. And we drove on, and we were in a panda car. There was me and a copper and a police community support officer. And we drove into this little cul-de-sac, and immediately the ne'er-do-wells, the criminals, started peering over their gates. They're coming out. And you know what? The look on their faces, their demeanour was like, what the flipping hell are you doing here? This is our street.
Get out.
And do you know what happened? Do you know what happened, Henry? The panda car turned around and went out. And what I'm telling you there is not that the police were necessarily personally scared, but their approach was not to agitate, not to... And we need a police force that bosses the streets, that gets out there and scares the criminals. And I don't think every copper should put their neck on the line every minute of the day, but we need strong action. The other thing I'll say that's really important for you and your listeners to understand is that when justice is slow, when it takes ages to get an arrest made and then for it to go to court and get sentenced, the criminals don't care as much. Rapid justice matters more than long sentences. If they think they're going to be dealt with quickly, it deters crime. But similarly, if witnesses think it's going to be handled quickly and effectively, they are emboldened to report crime. So our system where the prisons are full and the courts are backlogged is exactly what is feeding this crisis of confidence from the decent working class public who are scared to report crime.
Thanks very much for your time, Andy. That's Andy Preston, the former independent mayor of Middlesbrough. You might have views on that. It's certainly raised the colours that you've got views on, and we'll come back to those next.
To open doors, Prime Minister Andy Burnham, thank you for joining LBC tonight. It takes trust.
If it's say to the British people, I have to raise income tax, but I promised you I wouldn't. So tomorrow, I'm going to resign.
Trust that you'll be honest.
And I'm telling this story about how wrongly I called the Iraq War because it reminds me that ahead of us there's a long line of great unknowns.
That you'll be fair.
Why you are killing civilians.
We are not.
You are.
That you'll hear every side of the story.
The war, in short, has come to Moscow. For President Zelensky, the moral is simple. If Ukraine burns, Moscow will burn.
The questions that demand answers. From a voice you can trust.
You're listening to Andrew Marr on LBC.
Tonight with Andrew Marr. Returns Tuesday. Only on LBC.
Being put in hotels, and in my hometown, I literally saw a mother and daughter, migrant, ripping clothes out of clothes bins, the donation ones.
Right.
And dumping them all over the floor and taking what they want and then leaving. And I spoke to someone that works there, and they see them do this every single day. And this is just like 2 people.
How did you know they were migrants, out of interest?
Without judging, you can sort of tell. They didn't really speak English, and all the rest of it. They looked a bit homeless, if anything, but it was a mother and daughter.
Right.
And I spoke to. There was a little stall next to it, and he says they come every single day and they do the same thing. Dump them all out over the road.
Well, I don't like that. I mean, they clearly need clothes by the sound of it if they were homeless, like you say, but I don't like the idea of them chucking it everywhere, no matter who they are. So I agree with you there. But what do you mean the government isn't listening? Because we hear this a lot. Listening in what respect? Because, I mean, you might have seen the news today that the number of asylum seekers in hotels, I think, has halved in the space of 2 years.
This year, I've seen it more than anything. The past 2 years, I haven't noticed this so much. Within this year, it's been going a bit crazy. You've seen they're trying to cut down on the boats, right? But the boats are just getting bigger.
We certainly had that sort of so-called mega dinghy recently, but I mean the numbers are down. I'm not saying it's perfect; it's clearly not. There's more to do, but the number of asylum seekers in hotels has halved, and the number of boats are reducing. Well, clearly there's more we can do.
Well, maybe that's to do with the flags.
Well, it's to do with the government, isn't it, really? I mean, usually they're not listening. They're clearly putting a lot of money into it. We're sending a load of money to France and loads of money on the border security.
Yeah, but why bother sending it to France?
Well, because we want to stop getting it in the first place, don't we? Jumping on the boat.
But France weren't doing anything until... I can't remember who went out to France not that long ago. But
Chris Philp, I think it would have been, the Shadow Home Secretary.
The politician. That's it. He went out there and actually filmed something.
Yeah, I agree with you there, but
suddenly France seems to be doing something about it.
Well, we've had the figures out recently, and they've shown that the French have actually stopped quite a lot, actually. I think it's 38,000 illegal arrivals they detected in the year to June. So, I mean, that's way before Chris Philp did his sort of wannabe reporter act.
Yeah.
But they are listening. I mean, I get your frustration, by the way. I totally agree. I don't want to see people coming over on small boats. I don't like it. I think it irritates people. I think it's not fair. They've ultimately got no choice because there's no safe and legal routes in a lot of cases. But let's go back to the flags, though. Clearly some of these people putting things up, not all of them, but a few of the people behind this campaign, James, are pretty unsavoury individuals.
I can appreciate that. There's always bad people in every group, but the majority of the people in England that are putting these up, I do believe they feel like enough isn't being done. So if they put these flags up, it's like, what else can they do apart from...
But that's interesting then. So you're basically saying, rather than a symbol of national pride, these flags are there to send a warning shot to the government?
Just to the government to say, look, we are British, keep this country British. I don't necessarily think it's a racist thing at all. With saying to people, you know how, from what it comes across to me, is like people are putting these flags up to say to migrants and other people, we don't want you here at all. But it's not that. I haven't got a problem with people that want to come here because they're actually desperate.
Yeah.
The people, like we've seen, the people that are mainly coming are younger blokes.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to go into that too much, but I think our country is just crying out for help from our government.
Well, you're right. I mean, certainly based on the pictures that I see, you're right. There is a lot of young men on a lot of these boats that come over. What I would say as well is I think in a lot of the cases that maybe the family sort of can't come over, and it's the younger person who's going to survive the journey on a dinghy. But we probably agree, James, that we want people coming to this country in a way that doesn't risk their lives and also irritate people who live here and obviously don't want to see people coming over on dinghies, on small boats, right?
Yeah, of course. Okay. That's all we want.
All right, thanks, James. First-time caller there in Crawley. Lee's in Bournemouth. Hi, Lee.
Hello, mate. How you getting on?
Yeah, good, thanks, sir. What do you think?
Am I right in thinking you said that putting up flags is now illegal and they get fined or something like that?
In some parts of in Oxfordshire and I think in Birmingham they're trying to get it, but it's against the council regulations, I think.
The country needs to get a grip. It's a flag. I don't really see why people are intimidated by a flag. Like, you have, before you say, on Remembrance Day and things like that, people hang poppies and that up from the lampposts and the streets and all that stuff. They get left up as well.
I think they're mostly council, though, Lee. A lot of the cases, they're put up by councils rather than people.
No, but people around my area locally do it.
Right.
Like, but local pubs used to hold a whip round and put it up. Like, you know, what people's views are on the war, like, you know, they might be against it. But, yeah, there's probably a few bad people in there. It's a flag. It's literally a flag.
Yes, fine. But ultimately, there is an argument from some who say that it looks pretty messy, and you can't really deny that in some of the places. It looks terrible after they've been up for a year or so, and because of the rain and the sun and everything, they're just like sort of... It looked like people put their underpants on a lamppost and they're sort of, you know, brushing around in the wind. I mean, it doesn't look particularly nice.
No, you know, I get that. And, like, I was born and lived in London, and some of the streets around there are terrible, and that's without flags anyway. I mean, the councils are hardly doing a fantastic job as it is anyway, upkeeping. And now these laws are coming. The justice system's a mess, but you know what we do? We'll make hanging up flags illegal. I think.
Well, they were saying because they're having to spend so much money in taking them down. I think it's what our council leader was telling us. They're having to spend.
The councils are spending too much money doing their own thing. Look at the state infrastructure. Like, yeah, okay, it costs them money to do that, but let's face it could be spent on other things. Like, why don't they organise a community rip round? Like, to sort out?
And I don't want to see people go to prison for flying a flag, for goodness sake. But the point is, Lee, can't we just do it in a way where we encourage people to fly flags from businesses, councils doing it? That's great. But the idea of people painting roundabouts, I think it was, which looked absolutely terrible.
Don't agree with that at all. That's just vandalism. That ain't any different from graffiti. But, don't agree with that. It's a flag on a lamppost. If someone feels intimidated by it, like, there is no need. Sticks and stones used to be the saying. Like, some bloke could be walking down the road and I feel intimidated by a jacket. Where does this end?
Thanks very much, Lee. Glad we got you in. Let's go to another first-time caller. That's Lee in Bournemouth, by the way. Io is a first-time caller in Lancaster. Hello, Io.
Hi, you all right?
Yeah, good, thanks. What do you reckon?
Personally, I don't have any issue with people putting up flags.
You do or you don't?
Immigrant.
I missed you.
I don't.
You don't?
I don't.
Sorry, you don't.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't. First of all, because I'm an immigrant, and this is your country. This is Britain. This is your country. You should be proud of it. When I go back to my own town, we don't go about putting out flags everywhere, though. But flags put up the places they should be. The part I don't agree with is the part that people try to intimidate people with it. If you don't have Britain, they're kind of fighting like nobody's taking this country away from you. I don't see it that way. But the fact that people are scared that the country is being taken, putting off flags, trying to make a statement, stuff like that is, how do I say, it's people being scared for no reason in the first place. I tell you this for free, even if every single immigrant leave this country tomorrow and they see two people on the street, there are people who still gonna raise eyebrow about it. So it's not really about the immigrant thing. It's the fact that people don't want to see another people who are British in this country.
What do you mean then? This is about colour then, are you saying? Or what are you saying?
It's part of it's part being colour, it's part not being native white British.
Right. Well, that's just racist then, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't like people who aren't white, like then you're an idiot.
Yeah, and I work in a place, and I have people who first time, they don't even want to know you, they don't want to have that, do you know the kind of attack colored people face in places of work? I tell you this, when I came newly into this country, buses wouldn't even stop for me. It's that bad.
Buses won't stop for you?
They won't stop. No, you stand at the bus stop and buses will pass. They won't stop.
Where? What? Buses won't stop for you because you're black?
Yeah, that was about 4 or 5 years ago. Yeah,
right. But
it's that bad.
I mean, people will say, what's the... I'm not sort of denying it, but what's the evidence? I mean... Was it full, the bus, or...?
No, it's not full.
So, are you sure they saw you? Because I'd like... I mean, I don't think...
It's not a first-time thing. If it's something like, just like you said, maybe the bus is full.
Right.
First time, second time, third time. But you see, when you stand with a wild person on that bus stop...
Well, there'll be bus drivers listening to this. It'd be really sad to hear that, because they are some of the most sort of welcoming, hard-working people around. So
it's not happening now anymore, though.
Right.
I mean, like 4 or 5 years ago. You get me?
Yeah, okay. Well, that's it. I didn't know that. That's very interesting. Io, thanks so much for calling in. Appreciate you calling for the first time as well. Io is a first-time caller in Lancaster. We are going to move on. Thank you very much for all of your views on that. I'm sure it's a topic we will return to. Coming up...
It was a shooting weekend.
A shooting weekend.
Just a straightforward shooting weekend.
The police watchdog have called for a crackdown on shotgun ownership. Should anyone in Britain be legally allowed to own a firearm? We'll discuss after 9. Also,
you get a mounting bracket with them. It comes with an inverter, and you then basically plug them straight into a normal 3-pin plug socket.
Plug-in balcony solar panels will go on sale in the UK for the first time, but first...
Uptake of all routine childhood vaccinations is now lower than the 95% target. Falling vaccination rates are putting the nation's health at risk.
Childhood vaccination rates have fallen again, uptake in London among the lowest in England. Why is this, and what should be the consequences?
On your radio, on the LBC app, and...
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, rescuers are searching Himalayan valleys and hillsides after the devastating flash floods that have killed around 400 people. More than 1,400 are missing in Nepal and Tibet, including 33 British nationals. A glacier collapse sent a huge torrent of rock, ice, mud and debris through villages and key infrastructure. The King and Queen say they're heartbroken. Britain's sending £5 million in aid. This survivor says he can only look on in horror.
Everything has gone. Rice, corn, clothes, the tea shop. Everything was swept away by the flood. The only thing left is me and my clothes.
Donald Trump's tit-for-tat with Canada continues following the breakdown of trade talks. The US president signed an order to rename Lake Ontario Lake America.
That's going to take place right now as I sign the order. Okay. And we filed all the necessary papers, documents, everything else. We notified all of the various people that we have to notify. And this is official, effective immediately.
But also speaking this evening, the US president said Russia will not be attacking NATO.
I've had good talks with him. He's not going to be attacking a NATO territory.
Earlier this week, the head of the CIA travelled to Moscow to speak to his counterparts there. In other news, today's seen 2 further violent incidents in Middlesbrough following yesterday's fatal fire and Saturday's crash that claimed 7 lives on the A66. A man was injured in a knife attack around midday, and in the early hours, a vehicle was rammed into a wall. Data belonging to nearly 9 million customers has been stolen in a cyber attack at Manchester Stansted and East Midlands airports. Their operator insists passenger safety and aviation security hasn't been compromised. Well, LBC's Liam Gotting has more on this.
A statement from the Manchester Airport Group says that they took immediate action to secure the affected system and are working with cyber security specialists and the relevant authorities. They add that they take the security of customer information extremely seriously.
And around 500 people in the UK have now become ill with salmonella from imported eggs. It means young children, pregnant women and older people should only eat thoroughly cooked eggs. In the city, the FTSE 100's closed down 86 points at 10,793. The pound buys $1.35 and €1.17. LBC weather, a band of heavy thundery rain over central northern England, moving north, reaching the Scottish borders early this evening. Scattered thundery showers elsewhere tonight, lows of between 14 to 18 Celsius. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Henry Riley.
Good evening, 3 minutes after 8 is the time. It's Henry Riley here, in for Ian Dale tonight on LBC. Pleasure to have your company. Uptake rates for every routine vaccine provided to protect babies from severe illnesses have dropped again, according to data from the World Health Organization and other bodies here in the UK, in this case, the UK Health Security Agency. Although health officials noted that uptake appears to be stabilising among children entering primary school, they have warned that there is a long way to go before all children are fully protected. Now, the figures demonstrate that UK immunisation coverage continues to fall short of the 95% target that is set by the WHO, the World Health Organization, to ensure that there is herd immunity. So that's a sort of magic number, as it were, 95%, so far as I understand it. NHS vaccines are administered free of charge starting at 8 weeks old, with further vaccinations and boosters scheduled at 12 weeks, 16 weeks, 1 year, and then 18 months. And there is also a further preschool booster provided at 3 years and 4 months, while flu jabs are made available to toddlers and to school-aged children. Now, this data that's been released by the UK Health Security Agency, and bear in mind again that the figure is 95%, that's the target set by the World Health Organization, they have found that coverage for the 6-in-1 vaccine, which protects against diphtheria, whooping cough and polio, among 1-year-olds, so the 6-in-1 vaccine, has fallen again by nearly a whole percentage point to now 90.8% in the year to March 2026. So without blitzing you with figures, I think the thing that I'm really keen to explore with you this hour is, why is this happening in the first instance? Why are parents, clearly not all, clearly a minority, but nonetheless a significant minority, why are parents continuing to not immunise their children? Why are they opting against the vaccine? Is this a sort of strange legacy of COVID? Is this down to disinformation online? Is this due to people thinking it's too difficult to go to the NHS and they hear figures about long waiting lists? Where does this hesitancy when it comes to immunising your children come from? So that's the first instance. Be really interested to hear from you this hour. And also, and I hesitate on asking this, but I think it's important when you have a country where you will be fined if you take your children out of school to take them on holiday, for example. What should the consequence be for parents who are not getting their children vaccinated? And I'm really not comfortable with that idea. I really don't like the idea of penalising parents who have a lot on their plates. But ultimately, I struggle to find a reasonable defence for not giving your child, who is 1, I struggle to find a reasonable defence for not giving them something that would basically help save them from a whole host of life-threatening and life-changing diseases. Is penalising parents the way to go on this? What do you think? 0345 6060 973 is the number to call. If you've had to have that difficult conversation with a family member, with a friend who's opted not to get their child vaccinated, maybe you work in the health service and you're confronted with this constant uphill struggle. I'm always struck whenever I do a phone-in about vaccines, the amount of people who say, I work in the health service, and you wouldn't believe the number of people who I work with, who I interact with on a daily basis, who are vaccine skeptics, in some cases vaccine deniers. And look, if you work in a school, I suppose, or another early years setting as well, how do you have that awkward conversation with a parent? Do you go about having that conversation? The number is 0345 6060 973. That's how you get through on the phone line, how you WhatsApp as well, or the number to text is 84850. Before I bring in Dr. Chris Smith, just to reiterate that question for you, why is this happening, and what, if anything, should the consequence be for parents who are not getting their children vaccinated, ergo not saving their children, potentially saving their children, help saving their children from a whole host of life-threatening and life-changing diseases? 03456060973. Dr. Chris Smith is a consultant virologist at Addenbrooke's Hospital in Cambridge, who is also presenter of the Naked Scientist podcast and regularly helps us on LBC, and we're eternally grateful to him for doing so. Dr. Smith, talk us firstly through how worried we should be, if we should be, about these latest figures.
Hello, Henry. Well, they don't make great reading, do they?
No.
In the sense that we live in a country, a first world country, with access to some of the best healthcare that money can buy, and we have access to some of the best vaccines that have transformed disease rates and cut mortality more than almost any other health intervention in the history of medicine. The discovery of vaccination has completely changed the face of disease. And yet here we are in an era where we have more information at our fingertips and more of this available to everybody, and falling rates of uptake and the resurgence and return of diseases that the UK used to enjoy the status of having eliminated. We've lost our measles elimination status.
Oh, really?
We had 1,000 cases of measles last year.
Yeah.
Some other countries have got far more than that. So we're not alone in being in this position. This is a global phenomenon, which is why the World Health Organization are drawing attention to it, not just our UK Health Security Agency. It's also not a new problem. It's been growing worse over years. It's certainly accelerated in recent years. I think the problem has become worser, if you excuse the horrible word, more recently, and then stabilised. And I think COVID probably didn't help, but it's a longer term trend. We've seen this happening over a number of years, and I think probably it began with the situation around the MMR and Andrew Wakefield's paper in the
90s.
Lancet, which made allegations about, actually spuriously, side effects of that vaccine. And then since then, we've had other things like COVID and social media really coming to the fore, and where previously information shared with the public was carefully curated, editorial codes and so on, where you didn't spread misinformation. Where you have social media and anyone is basically being handed a megaphone, if got something to say, they can say it and it'll find them an audience. You end up with misinformation being promulgated and proliferated at a vast rate of knots, and the right information can't keep up. This is a toxic combination which I think has eroded trust and also led to people perhaps also hearing the wrong message, and so you get that unfortunately 1-2 punch which has driven down rates of uptake.
And I always am interested as a health professional, leading health professional in your case, Chris, where if someone comes to you and they may have been exposed to the wrong posts on social media or pointed in the wrong directions in terms of who to trust and whatnot, what do you say to them when they, through no ill intention, say, I'm just not sure about whether I should get my child vaccinated?
Well, this did happen to me. I was actually on a different radio network and I'd done a phone-in, and someone had actually asked or asked a question about measles vaccines. And after I came off air, I then got a communication from a member of the general public who initially was really quite rude and aggressive in their opening stance, and saying, this is all claptrap, these vaccines are really bad, they're linked to all kinds of horrible diseases. And actually I thought, well, I'm up for an effort here. I'll engage with this person. And I started a conversation with them, and I sort of was able to find out what it was that was actually worrying them. And then I shared with them one piece of data which, when I was in the situation where I had two small children, they've now grown up, gone to university, but I had two small children, and I understood what parents felt or feel when they're taking their child off for their vaccinations, because when you have someone plants a seed of doubt in your mind, albeit a wrong one, it's still the first thing that goes through your mind when a child is taken off to the doctors to have their vaccines. And so I understand where parents are coming from. And the thing I found really reassuring was one piece of research from Japan. It was about 20 years ago. And what they did was to say, well, when all the MMR scandal flared up, they actually stopped using the MMR for a while in a particular part of Japan. So they had all the data from that particular geography where literally hundreds of thousands of people were being vaccinated, and the rate of vaccine uptake fell to 0 over a period of time. So they then just measured if these vaccines are linked to, in this case, autism, which was the claim. As the rates of vaccine uptake fall to 0, if they are causing cases of autism, we should see cases of autism fall alongside vaccine uptake. And if you look at the graph, you'll see that while vaccine uptake rates fell temporarily to 0 and stayed there for a little while, rates of autism went up over the same period of time. And this is the most reassuring thing to me, divorcing any kind of link between vaccines and this outcome. Because if something causes something to happen, there has to be what statisticians call a dose-dependent effect. The more of something you use, the more of that outcome you should see. Actually, what we saw was no relationship whatsoever. And I shared this particular publication with this person, and the transformation was phenomenal. And we ended up having an extremely positive interaction. And they said, well, thank you so much. I'd actually picked up the information, the misinformation from just someone else on X. And they made a compelling case. I believe them. I will go back to them armed with this. And so I think, to a certain, sorry, Henry, I was just going to say, to a certain extent, I think it comes down to the fact that not everyone is equipped, like I am, with the wonderful, beneficial medical education. Not everyone has that level of understanding, and so sometimes people are more susceptible to misinformation. And I regard the low level of uptake as us having failed. Because I, like you, I share your sentiment. Giving people sticks rather than carrots to go and get vaccines makes me inherently uncomfortable. And we saw this during COVID, where we got within a gnat's whisker of people actually being dismissed from their jobs in the NHS if they couldn't produce a vaccine certificate. And it made very much ill feeling among people who were extremely supportive of the health service and very, very pro-vaccines, but being asked to prove that they were being vaccinated made some people feel very uncomfortable indeed. I think we ought to be giving people the right information so that they can make the right decision, and a safe decision and an informed decision. And if they can't make that and they decide not to vaccinate, then we haven't given them the right information and we've failed in our job.
Well, that's the issue, isn't it? Not everyone has the benefit of being able to call up Chris Smith on a radio phone in, for example, and get that care and attention which clearly was given. And, these social media sites where this information is proliferating, is spreading, are not going away. And so clearly, I mean, this trend is, I'm not trying to scare people, but if this is the trend, then there's nothing being implemented to buck that trend, is there? And then you have to look at policy.
Pointing the finger now, aren't they? Because
they are. But I remember Matt Hancock talking about banning people from schools and stuff.
Well, in the last couple of days, Meta have been hit with a $17 billion fine.
Yeah.
Linked not to vaccine misinformation, but to other kinds of behaviours that are linked to information sharing. And so people are now beginning to make an association or a link between social media and the messaging that's there and lack of safeguarding or loss of safeguarding, or an opportunity to safeguard against people picking up the wrong information and being misled or doing something that's actually harmful to them. So it's not greatly different to say, well, vaccine misinformation fits into that camp too. And perhaps these social media sites, many of them are very good and they're getting better. It's taken quite a lot of effort on the part of policymakers to encourage them to pay more attention to this. But I think there is an onus on the individuals or the companies behind these sites to make sure that the content that's being shared is actually accurate. And freedom of speech is important, but freedom to mislead, that I think crosses a line somewhere.
Thanks very much for your time, Chris. Dr. Chris Smith is a consultant virologist at Addenbrooke's Hospital in Cambridge, also presenter of the Naked Scientists podcast. I really want to hear from you this hour. I hate saying this, and I said it at the sort of top of the programme, or the top of this hour. I don't love the idea of having more stick, as Chris was saying as well, and lecturing parents as someone who's not a parent and clearly has no idea of the issues of parenting and the understandable, because of some of the disinformation that's out there, hesitancy that people might have. However, who do you need to hear it from? You hear it from everyone. You hear it from, other than a sort of handful of crackpot politicians, all the politicians say it. Other than a handful of crackpot medical professionals, all of the medical professions say it. This is not, it's not rocket science, right? These vaccines, these 6-in-1 vaccines, will save your child from a whole host of life-threatening or life-changing diseases. So if you don't want to take it, and we live in a country where you are fined because you take your children out of school, then why shouldn't you be fined, or dare I even say, not allowed your child in school because they refuse to take the vaccine? I struggle to find an argument against that. What do you think? 0345 6060 973. On the vaccine hesitancy, why is it happening, and what should the consequence be for parents?
Hear every side of the story. This is LBC.
By commissioning legal advice from government lawyers. Well, I mean, surprise, surprise, 6 years on or 7 years on, there's been no change in that. There's been no update. Do you think having a vaccine should be mandatory if you want to send your children to school? Let's make it as blunt as that. Should it be mandatory? Should there be a punishment if you don't? 0345 6060 973 is the number to call. Let's go first to Paul, who's in Crawley. Hello, Paul.
Hello.
Hello.
Very good, sir. I've not spoke to you before, I don't think, but I've spoke to most of your colleagues.
Well,
anyway, it's really just a question.
What a treat.
For us both, I'm sure.
Uh-oh, I don't like where this is going. Go on, Paul.
No, it's not going a bad way. It's more of a question, really, is that you're talking about that people shouldn't be listening to other people and people should be following government guidance. You quite happily jumped into a river, said it was absolutely wonderful, and then when you got out, you regretted your decision. It sounds like you're a little bit two-faced on this one.
I don't understand what you mean. How is that relevant, me jumping into a river? I mean, there was a bathing spot. Are you actually talking about me?
The fact that people are saying, actually, that they don't want to vaccinate, they don't trust the government, yet you literally heard that Teddington was safe, you trusted the government, jumped in, and then just the other day decided, actually, it was wrong.
Yeah.
And the government were not, in fact, right.
Well, no, I didn't say... So, in fairness, if you look at...
Do you get what I'm saying, though?
I do. I understand about your point about authority, yeah. It's a fair point. I mean, what I would say to that is the bathing spot status basically... Not to get too into the weeds of that, but it basically means that they have to be mandatory tested by the government. So you will physically see the evidence of the amount of, say, E. coli traces or the level of sewage or whatever it is. And so it's pretty... it's pretty transparent, right, what the situation is. Now, clearly, there are always risks.
But what you're talking about inoculations is not transparent in the way that you're talking about these water qualities. So,
well, there's a massive difference, isn't there? I mean,
you have a massive spin on what you think is appropriate.
No, I don't think so. Because, look, there's a risk with me jumping into the River Thames. There's also a risk with me crossing the road. If you look at the vaccines, the risk is very minimal. It pales into comparisons of the sort of water example. It does. I mean, just listen to any medical expert.
I think that's probably the problem, is listening to any medical expert. It's like, I didn't jump into the River Thames because you told me it was safe. And you told me then 3 weeks later it wasn't safe and you would never do it again.
Well, it is safe. Let's be clear.
So why would I listen to the medical expert?
No, I haven't said it isn't safe.
Can you see what I'm saying? You're espousing the same rubbish.
I like that you're such a keen listener, by the way, Paul, and you enjoyed the Thames. And by the way, it was Nick Ferrari's idea.
I'm not arguing.
It was
I
Ferrari's.
do love it. I just like.
Yeah.
I would rather that you
let's be
challenge
clear.
my thinking.
It wasn't my idea on the first place. But anyway, on the actual substance of what you're saying, I don't think I have said that it was unsafe to go into the River Thames. If we're sticking with that example, I knew
you'd never do it again, would you? You've said that.
It was sort of me bloviating. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily be against doing it again. It's not top of my list because I'm not a water swimmer.
I would never have a vaccine
not
again.
Not really, because there's no evidence. I mean, a vaccine is a thing that stops you against serious disease. Going wild water swimming is a hobby that some people enjoy, and there are probably some risks associated with it. I don't quite...
Sharky would think there was a lot more risk than you would imagine than in the COVID vaccine, I'm sure.
I don't think he would.
The problem
No, but he would, Paul. Come on, that's
arguing one side whilst irrelevating the other.
Paul,
I think that's a silly. Correct. Fair.
Okay, well, fair enough. But I think that's a silly example because the vaccine is very separate from that. Fergal Sharkey has done his research, and he's someone I like a lot. And he came in here yesterday and was talking about the risks that he sees with the Thames. That's absolutely fine, but that's a risk which people take when they go wild water swimming, for example.
Well, what about the risk that people choose not to take with vaccines?
Well, then you're leaving your child exposed to whooping cough, for example. You're leaving your child exposed to diphtheria, to polio. I mean, these are very clear,
I know, but
evidential.
I left my government to charge our children to fight against diabetes, and look at the school dinners they get. Come on.
Well,
I'm fully correct, aren't I?
I don't think you are. I'm enjoying the conversation, Paul, but I don't see how that's quite relevant. I mean, the idea of people indulging. Yes, I agree with you there, but I also
told
think
me that I can eat these fast foods. You literally propagate everything that makes me unhealthy, and then you're trying to tell me what is healthy while you're making me sick.
There's such a difference between enjoying ultra-processed... There is, between enjoying ultra-processed food occasionally, which clearly, and fast food, and clearly not amazing for you. There's a difference between doing that and not taking a vaccine, which will basically all but eliminate... Look at what Chris Smith was saying. In some cases, we used to be basically completely eliminated from measles. Because of the disinformation we're now seeing we've lost that measles elimination status, and it's proliferating in certain towns and cities.
Yeah, of course it is, because actually you're not giving us the fair diet. We don't have clean meat, we don't have clean fish, we don't have clean water, and yet this is all governmental standards that manage.
Hold on, you're doing a lot of whataboutery here, Paul. Talk to me about the vaccine in particular.
But you would love whataboutery. You usually like it.
Well, you've just spent the whole call talking about bathing spots, in fairness. I didn't bring it up. If we talk specifically on the vaccines...
Sure. I think, to be honest with you, you told people to come in, you forced vaccines that you hadn't tested. We've now got people that are getting sick.
Hold on, no, you can't say that. What do you mean that people have taken vaccines that haven't been tested? That's not the case in terms of these 6-in-1, is it?
Not in terms of the 6-in-1s, no, but the COVID vaccines, they were pushed out far too soon. And when people ask questions, you're closed down, you're told you're a conspiracy theorist. And actually, all I want to know is, what did I put in my body? I did take the vaccines, by the way.
So did I.
And I would like to know what is in my body, because all I know is that my father died. My father was perfectly healthy. He had his vaccine and was dead within 2 weeks.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
So I want to know what is happening. And I don't believe the government, and I don't think the government have been transparent. And I think that is the issue. The government should say, I've done this wrong, I've done that wrong, I've done that right, I've done that right.
I'm sorry to hear about your father, genuinely. In terms of what you say about being pushed out, look, this idea that can the government always be more transparent in terms of the information, in terms of what they're pushing out? Yes, I agree with you there. However, I mean, the idea that the vaccine was done for some sort of malign intention, which is often the accusation, is clearly not the case. They were rushing it out because people were dying at the rate of knots.
I don't think it was done for a malign intention. I think the consequences weren't thought through, and I don't think we're being told about the consequences. I think the outcome, honesty and transparency, is the issue. I think the cause of all of it was absolutely honest and great. I think the fact is that somebody needs to say, actually, you were sick and this is why.
Okay.
There's a massive difference.
Thanks for calling in, Paul. I enjoyed our first interaction. Paul there in Crawley. Appreciate it. Hope you think you had a fair crack of the whip at it as well. This comes in from Nikki, who says, I used to live and work in Italy for a small part of the year. Children are not allowed to attend infant school unless they've had their full complement of vaccinations. There's a very sad case going through the courts there. A little girl whose parents chose not to vaccinate her later died of diphtheria and had also passed it on to her cousins, but thankfully they had been vaccinated, so they suffered a much milder form of the illness. But the parents of the deceased girl could be prosecuted, says Nikki there in Kent. Of course, that's relating to somewhere outside of the UK, so we can talk about it. This from Tony says, elephant in the room, nobody wants to mention hundreds of unvaccinated for religious grounds or a culture of poor hygiene. Well, I think there certainly are some people who do attest to their religion that they shouldn't be vaccinated. I mean, ultimately, I have little sympathy with them as well. I'll be totally honest with you. And Ian says, like Chris Smith, there's the reason there's so much vaccine scepticism in the NHS is because of the threats made to people's jobs during COVID. It caused many people to push back. That's what happens when you threaten people. Not surprised why anyone would be confused and surprised that there's now a lot of vaccine hesitancy among NHS employees. Which bit are you struggling with? Well, because I think the evidence is clear, Ian. But anyway, thanks for making your point. Appreciate it, Ian, there on WhatsApp. More calls in a moment. 0345 6060 973 is the number to call. You can WhatsApp on that same number too. More of your calls coming up. Also,
they can be used in the garden, on the balcony or other outdoor spaces. They are aimed at people who can't put solar panels on their roof, for example, people who live in flats. The government says they could provide 1/5 of the electricity needed by the typical home.
As of today, you can now buy a plug-in solar panel in this country, and it's claimed that the savings on electricity should mean that the panel would pay for itself in 7 years' time. After the news, I'll be joined by the first person in Britain to have owned one of these panels. First, though, 8:30 The Time, the news, Daryl Jackson.
The King and Queen say they're heartbroken by the devastating flash floods in Nepal and Tibet. Around 400 people are known to have died, while 1,300 are still missing, including 33 British nationals. An inquest has found the 2 police officers and 5 young men killed in the A66 crash near Middlesbrough at the weekend died from head and neck injuries. More officers are being sent to the area after a series of incidents. And US President Donald Trump signed an order renaming Lake Ontario Lake America. He says a change on the US side of the border will take effect immediately. LBC weather, a band of heavy thundery rain over central and northern England, moving north, reaching the Scottish borders by the early evening. Scattered thundery showers elsewhere tonight, lows of between 14 to 18 Celsius.
LBC.
Sort of government conspiracy, wouldn't they, to microchip us all?
They might well do,
Yeah.
and I'm not sure it's possible to make these because we believe in free speech in this country,
Yeah.
free liberalism and all the rest of it. I do have 4 friends though who are perfectly well educated. In fact, 2 of them were very successful at Cambridge, and I feel that all 4 of them. I think it's a sort of selfishness because 2 of them openly just say that because of the herd effect, their children won't get sick because most people are vaccinated. So they're all right, Jack.
How selfish is that?
Yeah, one of them, actually her daughter, who's about 28, rang me recently and in a terrible state because she hasn't been vaccinated, obviously. And she was terribly worried. She had a rash and she might have measles. And where can she get help now? And, at this minute, because she's panicking. And I almost felt like saying, well, ask your mum. Maybe she should have vaccinated you. But it was a little bit cheeky, I thought.
Why do you feel this so keenly? Are you in that sector or no?
I'm a GP.
You're a GP, right. And so do you... I mean, because clearly they know that you're a GP. So, I mean, I'm slightly surprised they have that attitude with you.
They don't mind. They think they know better.
Oh, God, right.
But I think one of them thinks they know better, and she's always looking online, and you can find anything to prove anything online, as you know. It's very easy to be able to back up arguments with online information. But yeah, no, I'm with you. And
do you try and convince them though? Or it sounds like you've given up. To be honest.
No, I don't. I sort of avoid the subject because
just causes problems.
It does, and it's a bit like religion. I mean, it sometimes people can be temperamentally religious, but on the other hand, they can be extremely scientific and mathematical. But because they've got a scientific, because they've got a temperament which lends itself to religion, they can believe all sorts of things which are very unscientific. So maybe it's the same kind of thing.
Yeah, and lastly, do you think it's got worse, Rachel, this hesitancy?
I think it's definitely got worse since Andrew Wakefield.
But even since COVID, I mean, I see people pointing to...
Since COVID, yes, as well. And a lot of it is to do with, I think there is also... Somehow I feel that at the surgeries that I work, I do feel that also there's quite a lot of hopelessness and people feeling a bit hopeless and a bit sort of down. They're not going to go for the vaccines as much as maybe mums who feel that life is terrific and everyone's got a great future. There's also a sort of lethargy around as well, and a bit of downheartedness maybe that means that they don't always do what they should be doing maybe.
Yeah. No, fair point. I couldn't agree with you more. And thanks for calling in, Rachel. I think it's really important, as you say, you work in the health service as well. So I really appreciate you picking up the phone and being so honest. Rachel, a first-time caller there in Corby. More calls in a moment. 0345 6060 973 is the number to call. I should say, by the way, I keep forgetting to mention that you can watch us this evening on the LBC app, Global Player, or the LBC YouTube channel. So make sure if you don't just want to listen to us, if you want to watch us, you can do so. LBC app, Global Player, or LBC YouTube channel. There are other stories, though. We'll come back to vaccines in a moment. And as I've mentioned a few times, I'm fascinated by this. Plug-in solar panels will go on sale in the UK, or have gone on sale, I should say, for the first time from today, allowing households unable to use rooftop panels to also generate their own cheap electricity. Households across the country will be able to join the millions across mainland Europe who generate their own renewable electricity using balcony solar panels, which will be stocked by some of the UK's biggest retailers. Adrian Arbib is an electrician who sells and installs these panels himself and has also set up some outside his home. Adrian joins me on the line now. Thank you very much for joining us. I genuinely have no reference point for this, Adrian. So how big can they be, or small? I mean, how convenient are they for, let's say someone who has a flat in southwest London that's the size of a shoebox?
Well, the thing is, Henry, that the actual maximum size you can put on is 2,000 watts, right? That's the largest size of panels. That's quite a few panels. So each panel's about 200 watts.
Right.
So you can imagine that would literally cover your whole balcony.
Yes.
But then actually the inverters that you put in are quite small. They only output maximum 800 watts. So if you've got a small balcony, you're probably only going to get 2 panels on there, which is going to be 400 watts, and your inverter might be 400 watts as well. The most inverters are about 400 watts. So that's not going to do a huge amount. It's not going to be a kind of a magic bullet to reduce your bills to nothing, but it will certainly help. I mean, they're talking about sort of £300-400 in the cent. You can buy them in Aldi and stuff, and if you had those on your flat, you could probably, as long as it's sort of south facing and it's not shaded, you can get a reasonable amount of power off them. So you could be, let's say when you're out, you've got a parasitic load in your house, in your flat, and it might be like 200 watts. You might have a few things running. And it would knock out that, even on a fairly kind of not particularly sunny day, it would knock out your parasitic loads. And I think that they're saying that they'll pay for themselves in like
7 years or something. I read, yeah.
But it's all about the size. It's all about the size, really. I mean, if you've got a big expanse and you can stick a whole load of them up, and then 2 kilowatts, 2,000 watts is quite a lot. So, and then you have your 800 watt inverter. And that's going to be more than £300. That's probably going to set you back about 500-600, possibly a bit more than that. And then you really are starting to deal with things. But that is totally dependent if you're at home during the day. If you're out during the day, it's almost a waste of money. So that's my slight concern about it.
And in terms of the physical size as well, does that vary? I mean, if I'm buying it from, I see Amazon, Currys, B&Q, other places. I mean, if I'm buying it, is it the size of like an A3 bit of paper, or how big are they?
God, no, they're much bigger. I mean, they're quite large things. They're, you're looking, the ones that I have are about, they're about a metre by a metre and a half wide. So they're quite large. I mean, they're plastic. They're not heavy.
But I can't go smaller than that, realistically.
Not really. I mean, you can get ones that fold out, and there's a company called DJI that do these foldable ones, which sort of unfold, and then but then they're more expensive. They're not the cheap ones. There's a huge range of stuff out there. I mean, just have a good look. But it's the government have limited the amount of power to 800 watts, and that's for safety concerns. But you can get smaller ones, but again, they're not going to be £300. They're you can get compact ones.
I read that in Spain and Germany, they're known as Balkenkraftwerk, balcony power plants, because they can be plugged into a standard wall socket. Is that basically the same here as well? I mean, people literally plugging into an extension lead, or how is it working?
Yeah. I mean, there are some issues. I mean, there's quite a lot of pushback from the electrical industry, but the government said, it's safe, we can go with it, and Germany do it, and Spain do it, and it's going well there. They're selling loads. I mean, obviously, it's in a more mature industry. We're going to sort of sputter and start as we get going on it, but it will. I think it will have a good pickup. Actually, I think people will want it. But I emphasise it has to be where you don't have shading. If you've got any shading, or if you're north facing, or if you're sort of west facing and you've got any shading, it's a waste of time. You've got to have the panels really facing south to get your payback that you want, and it has to be unshaded.
And without getting into the weeds of it, then, I mean, how does it work? So you plug it in, and then that's sending that back to not the grid, but how does it work for someone who's clearly an
So what you've got, the panels are actually DC. The sun's energy hits the panels. It excites the electrons, and that creates a DC current, which is then inverted, and this little inverter at the back of the panel, which turns it into AC electricity. That just straight into your plug. Now, if you're not at home and you haven't got anything being used, that will actually go out to the grid.
So it will go to the grid, right? Okay.
It will go to the grid, and you probably won't get paid for it.
Whereas if I've got a wash on, then it's going into that, is it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, electricity goes to wherever the nearest demand is. So yeah, but if you're not at home and everything's off, and you've got literally nothing on on your electricals in your house, it will go out to the grid. So you're giving away your electric to the grid, and I think that's the idea of this, is actually to reduce the pull on the grid, the demand on the grid, and it's just lots and lots of little devices will make a difference. But it has to go in its sort of thousands, tens of thousands, really, to make a difference.
And do you think this is going to catch on, lastly? I mean, you sell and install these panels yourself, so you obviously got an interest in it. But
yeah, I mean, to be honest, Henry, I'm not actually selling them. I did look at it as an option, but I just really didn't want to get involved. I mean, Audi and Amazon are doing it so cheap.
And Argos as well, I read, yeah.
I mean, Argos, yeah. I mean, it's just really cheap.
But is it a sort of solar revolution is what I'm asking? I mean, do you think it's going to really, people are going to be going mad, queuing outside Argos to get their hands on these bad boys?
To be honest, I don't think that's going to happen. I think people might, but the reason I got into the renewables industry was because I wanted to make a difference. It's not about selling stuff to people that they don't need. I want to see carbon burn reduced. I want to see societal change. I want to see a move away from gas and oil, but. I don't want to be selling stuff that's not going to be any good to people. I don't want it to be some gimmick. It has to work, and it has to be in a place where there's sun, and it needs to be sold responsibly. And I think that's my key thing takeaway about this is we have to be responsible about what it can do. So reiterate, it needs to be somewhere where there is going to be no shade. Otherwise, you've just got some stuff on that's not going to work and do a very good job. But it's a great idea because you basically just plug it in and you will get some generation. I've got two small panels on the side of my house, and because they're slightly shaded. I've got nowhere else to put them. That's actually gets the sun. And I'm looking at, I probably make about, 400 watts, 400 watts a day, which is nothing really. I mean, I'm doing installs on houses as an installer for with large solar installs, and they're like sort of 7 or 8 kilowatts, 7,000 kilowatts. But that's not balcony solar. That's, I'm an MCS certified installer. But this is just for your average guy in the street, woman, whatever. Just have a go. Just see, if you've got a sunny aspect on your flat, it's definitely worth doing.
Thanks very much for your time, Adrian. I learned a lot, so thanks for doing that. That's Adrian Arbib, who is an electrician, and of course, as you heard him talk there as well, very much in this industry as well. We'll come back to your views on vaccinations next.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast with Tom Swarbrick on LBC.
This has been a real early test for Andy Burnham's nascent administration at the potential release of Albert Boas and Jesse Cole, who were convicted of their part in the killing of PC Andrew Harper. This is another example, I'm afraid, where the civil service have let people down by not being able to think outside the box and not understanding the public reaction to the release of some violent killers from prison early.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast with Tom Swarbrick. Back tomorrow morning from 7. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Freezer or a Wi-Fi router, etc., which sits the power on all day. Good point. There will always be power running, won't there? And Giles also says fridge is always on. Well, yeah, I mean, you'd be in a bit of trouble if it wasn't, wouldn't you? So yeah, very much in favour of the solar panels. Do you know what I've really got into? This is totally separate. We're talking about things that we plug in, which is a really tenuous link. I'm not on commission, by the way. I've just bought this thing called the Flight Wall, and I've put it on my social media, which is my Instagram, which is at Henry Riley LBC, by the way. Just give that a bit of a plug. I haven't got as many followers. Anyway, I've got about sort of 1% of the followers that blooming Tom Swarbrick's got. But anyway, and what was I saying? Oh, the Flight Wall, yeah. And I've just put it up today. Oh my God, people are obsessed with this thing. It's amazing. As I say, I'm not on commission, but it tells you what flight is going up above you. And I happen to live on the Heathrow flight path. I'm obsessed with the thing. It tells me, and I just Aer Lingus, or Air France, or Delta. I mean, I love it. And I've become mildly obsessed with it. Anyway, that's sort of what I've become interested in. Oh, dropping my phone everywhere. That's what I've become obsessed with at the moment. I'm getting looks, so I'm going to go back to the subject with which we are discussing. But if you are interested, I put on my Instagram, Henry Riley LBC. Claire's in Bradford. Hi, Claire.
Hi.
We're talking vaccines.
Yes.
Yes. Talk to me about what you think.
I believe very strongly that vaccines should be mandatory for children in particular.
Mandatory as in don't go to school if you haven't got one?
Yes.
Oh, really?
And the reason I do is because I think that children are vulnerable. They need their parents to act on their behalf. And if children aren't getting vaccines, then they're not only unsafe themselves, that also it put the wider public at risk as well. So parents who aren't vaccinating their children are being irresponsible.
Well, I think you're right. Ultimately, I said right at the start, there's no reasonable defence as a parent for not vaccinating your 1-year-old against a life-changing or life-threatening disease. You know, that is the be and end of it in terms of what I think. And also, I wonder, Claire, what you think in terms of these numbers are going down. We hear every year the number of the vaccination rate, where we've lost our measles elimination status. The WHO is saying it's got to be at 95%. I mean, this is getting worse and worse every year. We've got to do something drastic about it.
Yeah, we do, because there's absolutely no reason why that should have happened. I mean, I think we're so privileged in this country to have access to these vaccines. There's lots of countries that don't. And there's absolutely no excuse for having communicable diseases that have been eradicated in the past actually re-emerging.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're totally right. Claire, thanks so much for calling in. I really appreciate you giving your view on that. Claire, they're in Bradford. Let's go to Akan, who is in Sheffield. Hello, Akan.
Oh, hi.
Hello.
Thanks for having me.
That's all right.
Vaccines. Really interesting topic, one that's quite close to my heart.
Okay.
I don't think... well, firstly, I'm a pediatric doctor, and I see lots of this every time. And I think we started to see this surge in vaccine hesitancy, mostly after COVID. But I feel like what we should be focused on is regaining that trust between the health practitioners and the general public, because there's just lots of misinformation out there.
Yeah.
Now, I've had the opportunity to have lots of interactions, like, because in my setting, whenever a parent declines a vaccine, they have to invite me as like a pediatric doctor to go give these talks and try to explore the reason why this parent might have said no to this. And then
what is in you go around to the house or?
No, in the hospital setting.
Oh, in the hospital setting, right.
Yeah. And most commonly what I see is they haven't got information from the right source. So most times, after having like a 15-minute conversation with them and getting some legitimate NHS-approved sources, they essentially tell me, oh, they had no idea about this, that they've been misinformed, and they let their kids have the vaccine. So most of the parents, a very good number, probably almost all of them, they have really good intentions for their kids. It's just the information is coming from the wrong source. And that's where the major problem is, because COVID has put lots of things out there. We've got lots of people on TikTok, on Instagram, that are spreading lots of misinformation. And I've had the opportunity to work in like sub-Saharan Africa also, and I've seen the consequences of not having vaccine. The UK society is very much different from what you find in like rural Nigeria, like rural South Africa. We are so disconnected from death in this society. Probably most of us have never seen a kid that's had polio or a kid that's had measles. I've seen a kid that's died from all of these things, unfortunately. I've worked during my national service in a society where parents actually beg to have vaccines and they do not have access to these vaccines. So we live in a very privileged society here where these vaccines are offered freely, but because the information is not getting directly to this parent, the correct information is not being offered to these parents, and they're not getting this information from the most reliable sources, then we get all of these problems. So it all boils down to re-educating the public and trying to regain that trust between the health practitioners and the parents itself, and encouraging the parents to actually get information from the right sources. Because if you end up with a scenario where you have to mandate parents to have vaccines, else their kids are not going to go to school, it's going to make everything worse.
Well, it's unenforceable, isn't it, really? In terms of what you say about the privilege, I think it's a really interesting point that people in some countries are begging for vaccines, and here you've got people who are just not taking them up because they've read some crackpot online. But how do you go about persuading them? You've said that it's not a ban, so it's a bit more carrot rather than stick, is it?
Yeah.
But there are some people who you'll know yourself from your job, Akan. They're not for turning. They won't be lectured on it.
There's always that small number where no matter whatever information you give them, you're not going to be able to convince them. But ultimately, I can say this confidently, most parents, because the thing about vaccines is most times most people make the wrong arguments about vaccines. They're like, oh, my kid had this thing after having like the 6-month vaccine. Fair enough. But the thing is, there are lots of like disease conditions that declare themselves when a kid is like 6 months of age. There are lots of disease conditions that declare themselves when a kid is like 9 months of age or when a child is like 1 year old. And having a vaccine at that point just happens to be a blind coincidence. Vaccines are I can argue this, that vaccines are the single greatest invention in medicine currently. And if it still boils down ultimately to education. We live in a society where people have access now. Back then, like 10 years ago, people never had access to information, but now everyone has access. And having that access has exposed us to this risk where most people take everything hook, line, and sinker without verifying it. And that's where the government agencies need to come. They need to start they need to launch campaigns to re-educate the public and actually remind them this thing is really, really essential. Because mostly what we are benefiting from now is like the herd immunity from other people that have actually been vaccinated, which is not fair.
Well, and also we're below that now. 95% is the target, and we're not hitting that at the moment. Akan, really good to talk to you. Thank you. Akan there in Sheffield. Michael's in Basildon. Probably the last word on this, Michael. Hi.
Hiya. I think it should be mandatory.
Yeah.
However, I don't think we should prevent children going to school with their parents and making decisions. They're probably idealists.
Yeah.
And if you say that, they say, right, we home educate. The home education numbers in this country has gone up 5-fold since COVID.
Very good point.
So many children are missing out. Those parents will just say, yeah, well, I won't so much off school. And their children will suffer.
And then you worry about the education they'd get at home, I suppose, don't you, if they're not...
The local authority has to monitor that, and if it doesn't reach the standard, then they can prosecute the parent. Yeah. My view is you hit the parents in the pocket. That's the only way to do it. In fact, if you fail to send your child to school, you can go to prison. And people have done in this country. Yeah, I think we need to make sure we don't punish the children. So your parent won't give you a vaccine when you're 3 months, 6 months old, and so all through your childhood you're going to miss out on meeting friends, having a social life, going on school trips, doing.
So it's a fine.
It's got to be a fine.
Yeah.
It's got to be a big fine, and an increasing fine each year.
Yeah. And also information as well, right? We don't want to reach straight for the punishment. Let's shut down some of these idiots who are saying the wrong things, and let's actually do a campaign where we do try and persuade people, surely, of the benefits of the vaccine.
Well, we're trying to put rules on social media.
Yeah.
Then let's try and put rules on misinformation, and that's what it is.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Michael, great call. Thank you, Michael, there in Basildon. You had the last word on that. We are going to move on. Coming up...
It calls this World Cup venture a fraudulently off-market price promoted by Infantino for his own benefit.
We're going to be talking to the former chief executive of UEFA, Lars-Christer Olsson, about Gianni Infantino, the man who really won't go away, cannot escape the headlines. UEFA preparing to bring criminal proceedings against the boss of FIFA over his plan to sell shares in the World Cup. We'll discuss. But first...
To have a shotgun certificate in the UK, you just really have to have somewhere to shoot it. So it could be your local clay pigeon shooting range, maybe a club or friend's land or something along those lines.
The police watchdog is calling for a crackdown on shotgun ownership, as has been reported in The Telegraph. Should anyone in Britain be allowed to own a firearm?
On your radio, on the LBC app, and...
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 9 o'clock, nearly 400 people are known to have died and many hundreds are missing after the flash floods in Nepal. 33 of those tourists are from the UK. Prince William and Kate have said they're thinking of everyone caught up in the disaster. Dr. Matt Blackett, a natural hazards expert, expects the death toll to rise significantly.
This flood has wiped out many of the routes up valley, so there's nowhere really to get real information out. There won't be any telephone lines left. The mobile signal will be down. So I unfortunately feel that there's going to be a lot more damage as a result, many more casualties than we're currently seeing.
The government's announced £5 million of aid. Lib Dem leader Ed Davey is calling for more.
This is an awful tragedy. So many people in Nepal caught up in it, including British travellers, the government must increase the support for Nepal at this emergency time. I hope the cuts they've made to international aid don't get in the way.
In other news, more than 200 extra officers have been drafted in to help police keep innocent residents safe following a string of incidents near Middlesbrough. Investigations are continuing after 2 people died in a house fire yesterday, while 7 others died in a head-on crash nearby on Saturday. The data of nearly 9 million people has been accessed in a cyber attack. The company, which operates Manchester Stansted and East Midlands Airport, says it's working with the relevant authorities. And people can now buy plug-in solar panels in shops and online after a change in the law. The decision could save households more than £100 a year on energy bills. Adrian Arbib is an electrician who was the first person in the UK to have plug-in solar panels at home, and told LBC we have to be realistic about them, though.
We have to be responsible about what it can do. Reiterate, it needs to be somewhere where there's going to be no shade. Otherwise, you've just got some stuff that's not going to work and do a very good job. But, it's a great idea. You basically just plug it in and you will get some generation.
In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed down 86 points at 10,793. The pound buys $1.35 and €1.17. LBC weather: heavy rain will continue to move north across Scotland and across northeast England tonight. A few showers elsewhere with perhaps some thunderstorms towards the southeast. Lows of between 14 and 18 Celsius. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Henry Riley.
And a very good evening to you. 3 minutes after 9 is the time. It's Henry Riley in for Ian Dale tonight on LBC. Lovely to have your company. We're going to talk this hour, and later on in the hour, by the way, as I mentioned, we'll be talking with the former boss of UEFA about the very latest, where that bloke really is squatting in his job, isn't he? Gianni Infantino, the head of FIFA. But anyway, it looks like there could be criminal proceedings brought against him by UEFA. I want to talk about guns this hour and shotgun ownership. And there's a really interesting piece in The Telegraph saying that police are poised to call for a crackdown on shotgun ownership. The police watchdog, which is His Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary, is going to urge ministers to bring licensing for firearms more closely into line with stricter rules for rifles. Now, this recommendation is expected to be one of 20 demands that will be presented to this Labour government to make gun licensing safer. Countryside groups, though, have called the proposal a distraction from the real problem, which is a lack of a centralised licensing system. So my understanding is at the moment, police will not grant a shotgun licence if the applicant doesn't have a good reason to own one, and they may also deny someone a licence if you have a criminal conviction, or if you have, or if they have concerns surrounding your mental health. Those who want a rifle must provide a genuine need. So, for instance, where there might be a population of, say, deer that could be controlled, or being employed in an occupation such as gamekeeping. Closer alignment between the two sets of rules could see the police demand additional evidence from would-be gun owners about how they intend to use their weapons. I think this is a classic case of country versus city in this aspect, because I've never had the need for a shotgun. I've never been involved in gamekeeping. I've never even gone clay pigeon shooting, actually, which I'd quite like to do at some point. But I have, my partner is from rural Essex, and so it's a completely different ball game over there. And gamekeeping is hugely popular and something that I don't think I'd be particularly good at, by the way, when it comes to shooting sports as well. But clearly, it's something that is popular and something that is that makes up a real part of the identity, without trying to sound too corny and too putting too fine a point on it, of parts of the countryside. So I basically want to have a conversation with you this hour as to whether you think more restrictions on shotgun ownership are a good idea. These 20 demands that we see, for instance, bringing the licensing for firearms into line with rifles would seem to be one idea. And do you think people in Britain should still be allowed to own a firearm in the 21st century? 0345 6060 973 is the number to call. Your views on that. Obviously, if you're a shotgun owner or you have a firearm, I think I really want to hear from you first and foremost as to what your view is on this, and try and convince people who say, well, why on earth would you want to have one? Why do we need one? Haven't times moved on? Do you feel like this is maybe yet another attack on the countryside by the government? So the number again to call or to WhatsApp is 0345 6060 973. Before we come to your views on that, delighted to say I'm joined by Gareth Wynne-Jones, who's the farmer and broadcaster, and I can see him on a video link with me now. As I mentioned, you can watch us on the LBC app, Global Player, or the LBC YouTube channel. Gareth, take it away. What do you think about this this idea that there'd be a crackdown on shotgun ownership?
Yeah, more red tape, more problems, you know, for an industry that's already suffering. Don't forget, these are tools. These are tools to feed you. You say you've never used a shotgun or never needed one, but you've eaten food every single day. Who's produced that food for you? It's not Tesco's, it's not Sainsbury's, it's not Asda's. That'll be the primary producer, which will be the farmer. And then farmers need to protect their crops, they need to protect their livestock, you know, and guns are part of that whole ethos of what we do. So keeping the number of crows and, you know, birds that come and attack our crops. We have foxes that'll come and take our lambs. We have all kinds of problems that we need to use firearms for.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's done professionally. It's done for people that have had years and years of experience. We just don't go out and shoot things willy-nilly. It's you know, it's part of what we need in our everyday job.
Yeah, and I did also say, Gareth, to be clear, you know, I do eat game, so I'm not, you know, I'm not coming at this from a point of view where I'm saying I don't think you want me using the shotgun, but I do appreciate that indirectly I'll have benefited from people using it. I absolutely take that point. In terms of, I mean, I see people messaging in already saying they have a shotgun and they use it for vermin and things like that, and use it for population control. I mean, that's slightly different issue, isn't it?
No, every single issue is manufactured around, you know, if you talk about vermin, you're talking about rats around the farm. You know, you can blast a rat with, it's a lot better to be shooting a rat with a 2.2 or an air gun or a 12 bore than poisoning it. You know, if you're poisoning it, there's a good chance that something else will eat it and something else will die from that, from your cat to birds of prey and things like that. So by shooting it, it's it's a better, a more sensible way of controlling vermin. And if we want to just leave this country, go to rack and ruin like we are, just give the governments more powers, give them more policies, and let's just sit back and let this country just fall to pieces, because that's what's happening already. They really don't understand what the countryside is to them, and 85% of people now live in cities. They've got no connections with food, with how that food's produced, what is needed to produce that food. And, you know, we've had one of the driest summers we've ever had, loads of wildfires. We are in for a heck of a winter with food shortages. Food inflation is already at a massive hike. So you're taking another tool away from the farmer to protect his food that feeds you. That's it. It's as easy as that. And, you know, people will go out and shoot. You know, they'll shoot game, which is a massive multi-billion-pound industry, from grouse to pheasant to duck to partridge. And, you know, people will come from all over the world to shoot on some of these fantastic, great estates where they'll make money and they'll pay people and employ people. And some of that food will be fed into our homelessness people, and some people will just buy it and eat it. You know, I think game, as you said, you've tried it. It's one of the healthiest natural food you're going to have. I'd much rather eat a pheasant shot on my shoot than a chicken from Tesco's, to be honest with you. I know what's gone into that pheasant. I would have a clue what's gone into that chicken from Tesco's.
I know you said right at the start about red tape. I mean, ultimately, you'd accept, Gareth, that we want the people, and I think it's only 500,000 people who are certified holders for firearms and shotguns in England and Wales. We want the people who have these to be people who have a reason for it, right? To be the people who are trained, for the people who really desire it. Surely more checks is not necessarily a bad thing, so we check these don't get into the wrong hands.
I think you have to understand that they haven't got the people to check the system as it is. They're struggling. They're at their wits' end, you know. That's what we should be looking at. We should have a central database, and we've got the technology today that we can find the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I agree, nobody that shouldn't have a gun should have a gun. Nobody that's not needing one or wanting one or has, mental health issues or is not safe to have a gun shouldn't have a gun. And these things are really, really important. I went to America 2 years ago to do some filming, and before we did our talks, we were given like a briefing, just in case somebody came in to shoot us while we were on the podium, which was a bit scary. But they do these like safety protocols, and I asked the group of the people that were there, and I said, why wouldn't you have something like we have in the UK, when they vet everybody with guns and make sure that they're safe? And they said, no, Second Amendment, we have the right to bear arms. And they really, really fight for that right to bear arms, But we have a right to bear arms, but we're doing it legally, we're doing it lawfully, and hopefully, they're doing it in a way that justifies reasoning for people to have them guns. So it's having these conversations, finding solutions, but not tying these people in more knots and costing them more money. A lot of farmers on their backsides, how it is financially, if they add more financial pressure by putting more money onto these licensings, maybe a lot of them will just jack it in. And we don't want that. They are an intricate part and tool of what we use every day, and people need to realise that and understand that.
Yeah. Oh, it's certainly something I hear a lot when I'm on my regular visits to North Essex, and people saying that the government basically don't understand the countryside. I do take your point on that. And then in terms of the people who stopping these getting into the wrong hands again, and in terms of the checks, are you saying that the way to stop that then is the enforcement, which they don't have? Because I read there's a massive backlog as well at the moment, which the Countryside Alliance says. There's a huge backlog, firstly, in the licensing departments. They haven't got the staff to do it. Focus on that rather than the existing firearms. Right.
100%, and producing more rules than they can't even cope with the rules they've got. I've got firearms. I've got to renew it every 5 years.
I was going to ask you, so what have you got, if you don't mind me asking?
Shotgun.
Right,
shotgun.
okay.
Yeah, so every 5 years, it's renewed, and I've got to get a letter from the doctor, which it costs money, it takes time, and if you've been in trouble or drink driving or fighting.
And do the police ever check it out of interest? Because I've heard of some people who say the police come round occasionally.
Yeah, they do. They will check it. We've got some really good people here in North Wales that work really hard, but they're pushed the numbers as well. And it took me, I was very, very fortunate that my son had a licence as well, so I could keep my gun in his cabinet because our doctor was pushed to get the letter done. So, it's not something that's done lightly. There's a lot of due diligence done on it, and the police will phone if there's something happened in the family or somebody, isn't quite right. They will be asking these questions, which is really good. This is what it's about. It's protecting other people. We don't want anybody being shot. And if we look in this country, very little people are being killed by these kind of shotguns and these kind of firearms. It's minute compared to other countries, and we don't want anybody being shot or killed. 100%. But you know what? I think if you looked at how many illegal guns are in this country, I think it would be a lot more than what we've got, than what we think.
That's a good point. Gareth, great talking to you as always. Thank you. That's Gareth Wynne-Jones, the farmer and broadcaster. Your thoughts on this next. I come from Gareth's point of view on this, I'll be totally honest. I have no desire to own a firearm. I don't think, I've got no desire to own a firearm. I've got no use for it, basically. But for those people who do, there is a very, very small, I'll give you the figures just so you know. During the 10 years from 2015 to 2025, shootings involving legally held firearms led to the murder of 39 people. Now, that's 39 too many, but clearly, thankfully, it's something that's quite rare in this country. I wonder if that's three a year. So I wonder if that persuades you in any way, and whether you do think that having, thankfully, completely different laws to America, restrictions here as you wouldn't have there, would you like to see it eliminated altogether, though? Do you basically think, if you live in Britain, you shouldn't be able to own a shotgun, to own a firearm? 0345 60 60 973. Your calls on that next.
This is LBC.
And look, this is very graphic, but he then killed himself and was confronted by, because he was confronted by an unarmed police officer, he legally, Jake Davison, held a shotgun certificate. So he legally held a shotgun certificate and a weapon, having been obsessed with firearms, we read, from a young age, due to a trait I read in autism of developing a special interest. So he was obsessed with firearms and he was legally able to own one. So let me sort of reiterate what I'm saying earlier. I think in the right hands, these are absolutely fair enough. They're needed. They are used in the right way by huge swathes of people. You always do have that risk, though, where you have people who own it perfectly legally who go on and commit the most horrific acts. Where do you stand on this? Do you think that people should be able to, and obviously if you're a police officer that's slightly different, but should you be able to legally have a shotgun, a firearm in Britain today? 0345 6060 973 is the number to call. A lot of people getting involved in this. Let's go to Thomas first, who's a first-time caller in Hillingdon. Hi, Thomas.
Hello, Henry. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you, sir. What do you think about this?
I think it's perfectly reasonable for someone in Britain to own a shotgun, as long as they do so legally and all the relevant checks have been done by the police force.
Do I sense I'm talking to someone who owns a shotgun?
I do own a shotgun,
Right.
and I've owned a shotgun. I'm 27. I've owned a shotgun since I was 18.
Right. And why? I mean, because, I mean, in Hillingdon, I mean, it's not rural, is it?
It is the last rural area of London, really.
Well,
That's
I don't know.
where we're from.
Romford might have something to say about that, but I take your point.
This side.
It's Greater London, isn't it?
I don't travel into London a lot. I'm not really a city boy.
Oh, right, no, fair enough. You're Greater London, I suppose. But let's not get caught up in that. But what do you use your firearm for, then?
So I'm from a farming family, so we have the farming side of it, but also I was a member of a shooting syndicate, so we had a small game shoot.
Were you shooting clay pigeons or actual birds?
We did both. We did pheasant and we did clay days for fundraisers and things.
Okay. And, I mean, the obvious question is, why should you be able to own a firearm when most of London doesn't?
Well, if they wanted to join a clay pigeon club, I don't see why they shouldn't.
Maybe.
If you got a reason for it, I mean, it's like anything, isn't it? If you had a reason to drive, why shouldn't you be able to own a car?
Yeah. But, yeah. I understand that argument, but ultimately, you're coming from a point where you have a very serious weapon. You're clearly an upstanding bloke, and I get that, but there are people who, in the wrong hands, ultimately, and you can have all the checks that you want, but they'll have a very serious weapon on their hands, and they could use it in the wrong way.
100%, but I mean, a shotgun it's not really it's designed for more so birds and very small.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, there's a reason the army don't have it as their number one gun. Because it's not really that type of, I mean, it's a lethal weapon, like you say, in any hand, but no more so really than an unhinged man getting a car and driving it into a crowd. You can't odds against what people are going to do And if the police do their
But I mean, a car is there a shotgun is literally there to kill, isn't it?
Yes, I suppose when you look at it like that, yeah.
But yeah, I do take your point. And is it one thing I was saying with our guest, our farmer Gareth, is that there does seem to be, and I think I'd have fallen into this category until a couple of years ago when I ventured more into the countryside. But it's a city versus countryside issue, isn't it? And people
100%.
just don't understand it if they're from, say, my part of southwest London.
Well, so my dad's from central London, so he is a city boy through and through, and my mum is a countryside girl. So I've grown up, fortunately, in a countryside environment. But my dad, all the stuff I do is alien to him.
Right.
Because my mum's side of they're farmers and gamekeepers and things like that. And he doesn't get involved. He doesn't understand it. But I think in this country there's been such a separation from where our food comes from that a lot of people I don't tell people often that I shoot because I don't want the argument to come, I can't believe you do this, but they'd quite happily go to, any chicken shop and have chicken that has been, slaughtered at 18 months, only lived in a barn, where the birds that I shoot are free range for the first year of their life or whatever it may be, and they are free to come and go. They don't have to stay in the grounds we shoot at. It is,
But
it's a much better life.
You're
for a
saying
bird,
then
I
that
think.
if you shoot because you're involved in game, or you are involved in a club, or if you're a farmer, those are basically the only reasons that I can see why you need a shotgun.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't have one for any other reason. If I wasn't a member of a club, or I do a little bit of light pest control on a family friend's farm, but
right.
Nothing that you couldn't do with an air rifle.
Well, a wasp's nest, I suppose, but yeah, not the rest of it's not going to be much truck, is it? Thomas, great to hear from you. Thanks for being a first-time caller to LBC. That's great. He's in Hillingdon, is Thomas. Let's go to another first-time caller. A different country, though. Philip is in Rhymney in South Wales. Hi, Philip.
Hello there.
Hello. You've got a gun licence as well, I hear.
That's correct, yeah.
Since, how long have you had it?
Well, since I was around 12 years of age.
What? What do you mean 12? 12?
12 years, yes.
Right.
But
why did you have a gun at age 12?
Well, I was shooting in a clay pigeon club. To be a member of the club, I had to have a gun licence. So I got a gun licence to be a member of the club. I couldn't own a shotgun, but I was a member of the club.
Right.
So, which helped me out a lot, really, because they learned me how to respect the shotgun in the beginning. Health and safety as well, like so. And I was always under. Well. It was different times back there. I'm 61 now.
You're telling me.
I'm 61 now, so
my goodness.
I'm on a shotgun license for nearly 50 years now. So
yeah, wow.
Yeah, so
and I get that, but I know you say times have changed. We don't really want to be giving 12-year-olds firearms now, do we?
No. Well, you're not. No, sorry, you got that wrong.
Oh.
You can't own a shotgun. You can.
Oh, sorry,
you can
a
have
gun
license.
license. Sorry,
Yes,
fair point.
So, yeah, you can't own one. You can just have a license. So you can go to the club and say, yes, I got a license.
But you can still use one, I suppose, if you've got a license, can't you?
Yes, you can, but only under supervision. Only under supervision. You couldn't go around the fields and pop one over your shoulder and go up the street. No, you can't do that at that age.
Well, good.
You got
Have you got a cabinet then in your house where you've got guns still?
Yes, I go shooting now.
What have you got? Do you mind me asking?
I've only got my club gun, which is a track gun, which I go shooting.
Right.
I've shot for Wales a few times. I've been to England a few times shooting. I've been to Ireland shooting, represented my country in Ireland. So, I got a steel cabinet where the guns are in. So they're only for trap shooting.
Okay, and did you only need that because of where you lived, basically? I mean, if you'd come from a city, I don't think you'd be having the same view, would you?
No. Well, I grew up around guns because my father had guns when he was younger, and he was in the RAF, so he was a marksman in the RAF. So I grew up around guns. My father went hunting with his brother. So I grew up around guns, so I knew their purpose. Being around my father. My father was a very a strong stipulator of where they was kept and where everything was kept, and I couldn't touch them at all when I was younger. But I grew up and I respected them, and that's the thing now.
Is there something about the psychology as well of people who want to use these or want to have these guns? Is there still... Because clearly in the wrong hands, which is a very few number of cases, you do get some idiots and some... I was going to say, well, basically bloodthirsty, let's be honest, some people who are up to no good. Is there also a psychology thing, do you think, between those people who want to own guns and those who don't? I'm not trying to cause an argument, I'm just curious.
What do you mean by psychology? What do you mean?
Well, I don't know. The idea that you feel sort of safer with a gun, or you feel like you're in a position to protect your property in a strange way. I don't know.
I didn't say that, did I?
No, you didn't. No, I'm just throwing it in the mix.
No, I never thought of it, to be perfectly honest with you, because that wouldn't enter my mind. Protecting my property. Do you know what I mean?
Fair enough.
If someone's knocking at the door, banging out the door, I wouldn't run upstairs, unlock my cabinet and bring my gun down.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? It's not America.
Yeah.
You know, and the thing is, here as well, what you got to consider is that if you do anything wrong, they'll take it from you. It's as simple as that. So you've got to abide by the law to keep the shotgun in some respects as well, like keep your rifle, because if anything happens, they will take it away from them. Because I know instances myself where going back a few years ago. But I don't think that, to me, that won't come into my thinking at all.
Does everyone you know in that area of Rhymney? I don't know Rhymney very well, I'm afraid. I know North Wales.
It's Caerphilly.
It's Caerphilly, right.
Caerphilly, yeah.
Are there many guns?
Many guns? I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you really.
You don't sort of talk to matey boy down the pub and ask about his gun, no? It's not something you trade?
I don't go down the pub. I don't drink anyway.
Oh,
so I don't go down the pub or anything. But to be perfectly honest with you, where you used to going back, say, 30-odd years ago, maybe a little bit longer than that, you hear a couple of guns go off in the distance. I live like literally 2 or 3 minutes from a farm up the road. You used to hear a couple of guns going off, but not so much now, to be honest with you.
OK. Thanks, Philip. Great to hear from you. And thanks for calling LBC for the first time as well. How long have you been listening to LBC?
Oh, quite a bit.
Well, great.
Quite a few years, actually.
Well, great. Well, it's great to have you on board. Thank you. Philip, they're a first-time caller in Rhymney. Be like Philip. Call LBC for the first time. 0345 6060 973 is the number to do so. You can WhatsApp on that same number too. Is there any justification? We're getting a lot of people who own firearms, which is fair enough. Are you sceptical? Do you think it's actually too easily available, even at being only half... I say only 500,000, but 500,000. Do you think the government are right to look further at cracking down on shotgun ownership? Your calls on that in a moment. Also...
Today I feel Qatari. Today I feel Arab. Today I feel gay.
Yeah, today I feel like you should be sacked. Gianni Infantino squatting in his job. UEFA are preparing criminal proceedings, it is being reported, against Gianni Infantino over his plan to sell shares in the World Cup. We'll speak in just a moment with the former chief executive of UEFA. First, though, 9:30 the time, the news, Daryl Jackson.
More than 380 people are now confirmed to have died after flash floods in Nepal and neighbouring Tibet. Footage shows walls of mud sweeping through entire communities after a glacier collapsed near to the border. Donald Trump has said Russia will not attack NATO. Earlier this week, the director of the CIA flew to Moscow for talks with officials there. And the 2 police officers killed in a collision on the A66 near Middlesbrough at the weekend died of head and neck injuries. This lunchtime, a man was injured in a serious knife attack a few minutes away. LBC weather, heavy rain will continue to move north across Scotland and across northeast England. A few showers elsewhere with perhaps some thunderstorms towards the southeast, lows of 14 to 18 Celsius.
This is LBC.
licensing, that the system at the moment basically doesn't work, and that's how you have that's how you fix the problem of these getting into the wrong hands. Not the sort of the number, so to speak, it's the actual system that goes about checking people who have these shotguns. Should you be able to own a shotgun or a firearm in modern Britain, in your view? 0345 6060 973. Is there any possible justification? Come back to your views on that in just a moment. First, though, European football's governing body, UEFA, is preparing to bring criminal proceedings against the FIFA president, Gianni Infantino, over the attempt to sell shares in the World Cup to private investors. The revelation is contained in legal documents, with UEFA subpoenaing FIFA and the financial institutions involved in the US to obtain documents related to the scheme. Well, let's bring into the conversation here Lars Christer Olsen, who is a former chief executive of UEFA, and delighted to say he joins me on the line now. Lars Christer, thank you very much for your time, sir. I mean, this row with Gianni Infantino is not going away. Should he just step aside?
Yeah, hopefully, I would say, but I'm not so sure he does. Because the situation in the world of football is, for the moment, I think that it's 50-50 whether he's leaving or not. So this is why I think the precautions and the things organised by UEFA are correct to force him away.
And just explain a little more then about how what you think UEFA are trying to do here, because it's against Gianni Infantino and Joshua Kushner as well.
I don't think they are involving Kushner because it's against Gianni, because he's the one who was bringing Kushner in, and that is not the problem for FIFA if he wouldn't sell anything.
Okay.
And now FIFA has said that they are pulling this idea back. But I read recently, earlier tonight, that there also is a case where he was trying to sell out a youth under 15 competition.
Mm.
So they are digging and trying to find material which is difficult for him to live with.
Will any amount of pressure from European football's governing body persuade Gianni Infantino to go? Because clearly he has the support from other associations across the world.
Yes, so it's UEFA cannot do it on their own. They have to have some of the other confederations doing it together. And I have heard, as you probably know, of course, also that CONCACAF, the North American confederation, also is the Asian confederation, are also thinking about joining UEFA. And UEFA has said that threatened with boycotts, for example, and that would be devastating for the world of football and the united form of organization as FIFA should be will get a big blow for that.
And they're fortunate in some way that we've had the World Cup, because if we were just months, weeks away from the men's World Cup that we just saw, and you had the serious prospect of, well, the winners, Spain, not competing, being a European football club, I mean, there's no way a boycott would not force Infantino out, surely.
Yeah, but this didn't happen, did it? Because now the threat of boycotts is more about minor competitions. And I think the best way of getting rid of Infantino could be the way UEFA is now acting and making legal complaints. And so that will be more difficult for him to handle, I think.
What do you think he's doing to the reputation of football worldwide, Gianni Infantino?
Yeah, it's devastating. And the worst thing is, of course, that there will be internal conflicts within the football family. And that is also why a boycott by Europe, for example, or even two confederations, that would totally destroy the finances of FIFA also. So there is a lot at stake for the time being.
And clearly Gianni Infantino has actually had controversy ever since he started. I mean, there were all sorts of him being mentioned in the Panama Papers, and there were all sorts of allegations of corruption. Do you need to limit the amount of time that someone can serve as president of FIFA?
Yeah, I think so. I made a proposal some week ago, I think it was, when I was talking to especially you in the British media, that there should be a system a rolling system which is given the different confederations 4 years of presidency over FIFA. Something like which is already organized in the European Union, for example.
Yeah.
There was a proposal there already in '98 from the UEFA president then, Johansson. He proposed that there should be a rolling presidency principles, because that would make it much more difficult for those who have dictator fashions to get so much power.
And lastly, I don't know if you're a predictions or a betting man, but do you think he'll be in his job by the time of the next major tournament, the Euros, which actually I think are here, aren't they?
Yeah, in my worst moments, I think he will survive because he's very good at keeping his network active, and he's good at convincing people. Africa has already given him their support, and they are 55 countries, which are as big as UEFA, for example. So he will not give up easily. So that is why I think that these allegations and bringing up legal matters is an additional factor which could make the difference.
Thank you very much for your time. Much appreciated. Lars Christer Olsen is the former chief executive of UEFA. And for those who are not football fans, UEFA is the European football governing body, where, of course, FIFA is the world football governing body. So very good to have that individual on who had such a senior role at UEFA. I mean, it's just madness that this man is continuing in his job. I said earlier he was squatting. And actually, I think if you'd asked me 2 weeks ago, I'd have said Infantino goes. It's inevitable. As night follows day, he'll have to go. And now, as Lars Christer just says, I think he's going to stay. I think he's going to tough it out. He happens to have the fawning president all over him, or Donald Trump. I mean, Gianni Infantino's all over him like a cheap suit, isn't he? He even made the FIFA Peace Prize for him. He gave him a made-up prize in order to appease the ego of Donald Trump. So I think the idea that Gianni Infantino is going to go quietly, I mean, he's going to go kicking and screaming, and I don't think he's going to go at all, which I think is really ultimately depressing. And how sad and annoying is it, by the way, as well, where the major tournaments, because let's call it what it is, the Men's Football World Cup clearly has a massive following, but there are other tournaments as well, and there's the Women's World Cup coming up. I think it might be under 16s, isn't it, which is around the corner. And the whole attitude to that was, well, of course, you know, UEFA can boycott that, and it's basically not going to be that big a deal. For a lot of these people, that'll be maybe because injuries, and you don't know what happens with people playing football, and particularly in women's football as well. Sadly, it doesn't have the investment that men's football does. The idea that is just going to, we can just sort of afford it, and that ultimately, tough luck if you're one of those women playing football, but you know, we need to get Gianni Infantino out. It's such a shame, isn't it, that we could have been in a position where that would have been completely boycotted and those people would have not gone to a World Cup. It was the women's under-17s, by the way, World Cup. So you could do it was scheduled for October as well, so just around the corner. So goodness knows. I mean, do we have any, I suppose we don't know whether people are going to be competing in that. I think there was a suggestion that we are, but as long as this guys there's always going to be problems. Let me tell you, by the way, just to be clear, UEFA have filed proceedings in a court in Miami against Infantino, but also Thrive Capital, which is the investment company owned by Joshua Kushner, whose brother is Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and also the former chief executive of Formula One owner Liberty Media, Greg Maffei. So we could see Joshua Kushner potentially having to testify in an American courtroom. Who knows? Let's go back to your calls on firearms. Phil's in Inverness. Hello, Phil.
Good evening, Henry. Great show.
Thank you. What do you think, sir, about this?
So I've held a shotgun permit since I was 14. And I think there is a nuance between a firearms certificate and a shotgun permit.
Tell me then.
And so the police take a very different view, and the law takes a very different view between holding a firearms certificate, which allows someone to own like a rifle, and having a shotgun permit, which allows someone to own a shotgun.
Yeah.
And I think we have, arguably, the UK is probably the strictest gun laws in the world. Maybe Singapore might edge it. But the level of scrutiny and the level of control that we put is absolutely the right way to go. And it demonstrated by how British gun owners are amongst the most responsible and the safest in the world.
And are you ever going to be able to be in a position where you don't have, and I say thankfully it's rare, but in the last 10 years you have had 39 people murdered by people who've legally held firearms? I mean, sadly, I don't know if you'll ever be able to eliminate that. I don't know.
Unfortunately, humans are human, and therefore it's impossible. I mean, as an example, last week I had a doctor's appointment and a dental appointment, and at both appointments on the screen it flashed up that I was a registered shotgun license holder.
Oh, really?
And so,
wow.
Yeah, so it's on every single time you have a contact with the NHS, with the police, with any other that is on the screen, so that the doctor, or in my case the dentist, has to make a conscious recognition of that fact. So if, for example, you've had issues with mental health, you've been prescribed drugs, anything that could have an impact on that, they have a responsibility to inform the police immediately. And so, like, our system is genuinely great in comparative terms to almost anywhere else in the world. I do agree with the previous caller about how stretched police licensed officers are. But, for example, you're interviewed in your home to see what your living situation is like on application or on reapplication. They physically inspect where things are going to be stored. I know you raised earlier a question with the chap from Wales about
cabinets,
like people who have a view of doing it for like home security.
Oh yeah.
Well, like, so in my case, and as per the legislation, the weapons are in one locked cabinet behind a locked door. Ammunition is in a separate locked cabinet behind a separate locked door. The keys are kept in a separate location. I mean, by the time that you'd gone through the process of getting all that out, the burglars would have taken the entire house, I believe. So it's just not. I mean, of course, there are lunatics in every part of society, unfortunately. But I think, you know, the health service, the police, the system we have in place does everything it can to possibly mitigate that. And I don't in any way underplay those 39 people's lives who were tragically lost. But as you said, as someone said earlier, I mean, you don't view all drivers by the fact that there are people who weaponize vehicles, or all chefs who own kitchen knives by people who weaponize knives.
And do your friends or people you meet when you end up having this conversation, do they think it's a little bit weird that you have a firearm or a licensed shotgun owner?
So, I mean, I live in the Highlands, so it's perhaps slightly more societally normal than it would be if I lived in, you know, Clapham. But, you know, for example, I used to shoot clay pigeon competitively for the armed forces, and I know someone in the Olympic setup. They live in central London. They train out in Surrey. You know, they have to get from where they live to where they train. And so, you know, people do live in urban areas who shoot in the same way that people live in rural areas. It's not a conversation I go around having, because you don't necessarily want to draw attention to the fact that these things are in your home. But I mean, if you go to a farm in most parts of the UK, and particularly, you know, in the Highlands, etc., it is not a huge societal upset, I don't think.
Okay, thanks, Phil. Appreciate you calling in. Phil there in Inverness. More calls in a moment. 0345 6060 973.
Coming up at 10 on LBC, Ben Kentish.
Britain's benefit system is writing off too many sick and disabled people, according to the man in charge of it. Is that your experience? Plus, what should we do about the parents refusing to vaccinate their children?
Ben Kentish at 10. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
able to own one. I think Ian actually will probably have some views on this, being a country lad farmer himself, from that stock. Julie's in Plymouth on this. Hello, Julie.
Hello, Henry. Enjoyed your couple of weeks.
Oh, thank you. Don't worry, Ian's back soon. You won't have to put up with me any longer.
I shall listen on Sundays. Henry, obviously I'm in Plymouth, and week yesterday was the 5th anniversary for 5 families that wished somebody hadn't got hold of a shotgun so easily. So I come from it in 2 different places. I mean, it was.
Let me just remind people, by the way, because I referenced this. This is in 2021. Jake Davison, who killed. We don't go through it again, but ended up killing. One of them was a 3-year-old girl. God.
Yes, just walking. I had a couple of phone calls myself saying, "Are you okay?" Because it was just like, apart from his mother, it was just random people when he walked out of his house. I mean, a little girl with her dad, a lady coming out of a hairdresser's, and a man walking his dog. I mean, God bless them all. It's but I'm a little bit. I feel a bit of a hypocrite because my brother used to run a clay pigeon school up in Warwickshire.
But that's different, isn't it? I mean, we can still let people enjoy clay pigeon shooting, can't we?
Well, yes. I think, I unfortunately passed in 2020 prematurely, so I didn't have a chance to speak to him about this. But, I remember when he used to come round to my mum's on Sunday evening for tea in Coventry, he used to bring his gun out of his car in a locked box. But obviously, at his house in Rugby, he would have them in a cabinet and all. And he had quite a few because he had a very successful school. But I'm not sure about farmers always going for the rifle with wildlife. That bothers me a bit. And I'm sure I used to live in Norfolk and in the countryside, so I'm aware of game shoots, and I'm sure they breed them now as well, and it's for shooting. And I once cooked a pheasant that was given to me by a neighbour in a lovely homemade apple cider sauce, and there was a lot of gunshot in it. I was like, I don't think we can eat this. Obviously, hadn't prepared it properly.
Wait, you are joking, or are you being serious?
No, there was all pellets in it.
Oh my goodness!
I mustn't have. I think I was quite young still then, and I needed to update my cooking skills. But
I don't know. I think even Jamie Oliver would be a bit surprised to see some rifle pellets in his pheasant.
I think, it was. The sauce was lovely, but the pheasant was an absolute disaster. But I don't know. I don't agree with breeding. I had chickens, and I lived in the middle of North Norfolk, and it was 2 dogs from next door, 2 little dogs from next door that killed a couple of my chickens through the hedgerow.
What the hell? What's going on in Plymouth?
Well, that was in North Norfolk, but I mean, it was my responsibility to keep my chickens safe from the fox, and I did let them out when me and the cat and the dog were in the garden, and it's like,
you just need laser beams now or something to get rid of them, or
Yeah, we just need. I don't know. I mean, we need to think about the wildlife. We need to think about the safety of people. Those poor families in Plymouth grieving. We need to think more about it. It's not. I don't know about shooting for fun.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of people would agree with you there, Julie. Thanks so much for calling in. Thanks for the kind words as well, Julie. Appreciated. Steve, that's Julie in Plymouth. Steve says, I'm close protection. I can't be armed in the UK. However, in Latin America, the US, Middle Eastern countries, I can be armed. I served in Iraq for 2 years rotation, ex-military service of 22 years in the infantry. I now work in anti-piracy, which permits me to carry weapons in the private sector. There are certain professions that require this. Okay, fair enough. And this one's, I'll leave your name out of it. It says, I'm a firearms and shotgun holder, and in the last 24 hours, I've been trying to renew my conterminous certificates. The website that the Metropolitan to police officers that puts them up for renewal process is almost absurdly incapable. I've tried to upload my details to renew my certificate nearly 20 times, and each time the website crashes. No wonder there's an 18-month backlog for new applications. I stalk fallow deer for culling purposes and shoot vermin to help farmers control pests. Thank you. Kim's in Virginia. Oh, hello, Kim.
Hi, Henry. You need to come over here. Carry some weapons. Enjoy yourself. Buy a shotgun at Walmart.
Would you actually... Wait, you can get one at Walmart, can you, just down the road?
Yes.
Wow,
yes,
my goodness.
You can get one at Walmart.
What have you made of our conversation then, listening over across the pond?
I think it's bizarre. The one caller talking about how if you carried a shotgun, it's, broadcasted all over. That would never fly over here. You can go into some of the sporting goods shops, and, we have pistols that are pink and blue and all different kinds of colors. We can buy pepper spray off of Amazon. We can buy tasers off of Amazon.
Well, this is crazy, Kim. This is completely mad.
No,
Why on earth do you need a taser?
Protection?
Well, but what?
A criminal would never know.
Surely if there's more tasers, that increases your risk because you might be tasered by someone else. I mean, do you really want to live where everyone's armed? Or everyone has a taser? Especially for females, if you're coming out late at night, or they're not exactly like police grade, but you could go on Amazon right now and buy pepper spray or tasers. But on a gunpoint, why would you need a gun?
Yes, protection.
But from who? From what?
From other people.
But surely the reason why we have these instances, which are very prevalent across, your country, sadly, but because of those guns getting into the wrong hands in the first place. So why would you make it easier for people to do that?
You have a lot more stabbings than we do.
Do we?
Like the amount.
I don't think some of the big. If you look at London, it's far safer than many cities in America. Safer than New York. Safer than San Francisco.
I don't know. I think there's just such something in our culture with our amendment rights. It's just something that's been ingrained into us.
Okay.
You see young kids, going again. Walmart. I mean, that's not don't do all, but kids 12, 13 years old. It's not unusual for them to get maybe a shotgun for their 15th, 16th birthday. Again, you can have an open concealed permit. You could walk around with a pistol strapped to your hip. You could have a concealed permit. Right now, I could have a little .45 in my handbag right now. Nobody would know as long as you have a permit for it.
Wow, well, I've learned a lot. Thank you, Kim. I can leave it there because it sounded like you're in the mid-air, actually. It sounded like you're flying over. Thank you. I appreciate your call in on that. It's always good to hear from the United States as well. By the way, the per capita rate of fatal stabbings is similar to or even higher in the US than it is to UK. So happy to make that point. Joe in Cardiff. We've only got 40 seconds or so, Joe.
That's all right. How are you?
Thanks. Good, sir. What did you want to say?
Basically, I think the rules are fine as they are. I mean, I applied for my shotgun license about 5 years ago, and it only just got approved about 6 months ago.
And what do you need one for, just so I know?
Well, I'm in South Wales, so I only use it for clay pigeon shooting, so I'm looking into getting into that. But the rules are hard enough as it is. I mean, someone comes out to check, takes pictures of your cabinet, and it's very easy to lose your license as well. And the police officer told me not to tell anyone you got one. It's frowned upon by multiple people.
Right. But do a lot of your mates in South Wales have it, or people a licence?
No, hardly anyone.
I love how the police have told you not to tell anyone, and you've called up LBC to tell us. I think that's great.
They said that, like it's frowned upon, don't tell your neighbours or nothing like that. It's very easy
that's
to
great.
lose your licence.
Don't tell your neighbours. You could lose your licence, but call 0345. Cheers, Joe. You had the last word on that. Really appreciated Joe there in Cardiff. Thank you very much for all of your calls and messages this evening and throughout the last couple of weeks. I've been sitting in for Ian Dale. Back with you on Tuesday. He is after the bank holiday weekend at the usual time from 7. Meanwhile, I'll be here on Sunday afternoon from 3. If you missed any of this evening's show, listen back on our free Global Player app or the LBC app. You can stay up to date with all of the latest news, videos and opinion. Download the official LBC app for free from your app store now. At 1 on LBC, it's Clive Ball, but right now, here's Ben Kentish.
Thank you, Henry. Hello there. A very, very good evening this Thursday night. Late Nights with Ben Kentish here on LBC. Tonight,
I want to not sign them off and write them off. I don't believe you'd have exactly the same conditionality system for those signed off sick and those who are standard unemployed, but I don't believe we should just forget about them either.
More warnings from the government today that people being signed